Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to Borough President Adams' Uniform Land Use Review Procedure public hearing. As the governor's emergency order authorizing virtual public meetings was rescinded on June 25th, the Borough President's office has resumed in-person hearings in accordance with the open meetings law. Tonight, we are conducting these proceedings simultaneously at Borough Hall and remotely via WebEx. This hearing is being recorded to comply with the public law for transparency and will be available on Borough President Adams' One Brooklyn channel on YouTube. We will provide and repeat instructions for live and virtual testimony. Brooklyn Borough Hall will be open all evening to those who wish to speak or listen to the hearing. To testify in person, you must complete a speaker's slip and be in the courtroom when your name is called. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. After providing testimony, you will be asked to go to the community room, which is one floor down, where you can stay and listen to the other speakers. Please note that face masks must be worn at all times inside Borough Hall. Online viewers may join the hearing via the link and password on the following slide. To testify, please message your request to all panelists in the WebEx chat. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. We also ask that you not clap after speakers so that we can get through all the speakers as quickly as possible and give everyone an opportunity to testify. Additional comments and longer testimony may be sent to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov for Borough President Adams' consideration. Please call the item and let us begin.
Calendar item number 1, 200184 ZMK, 200185 ZRK, 200186 ZSK, 200187 ZSK.
Applications submitted by Franklin Avenue Acquisition LLC pursuant to sections 197-C and 201 of the New York City Charter for the following land use actions affecting a 2.76 acre project area on an irregular block bounded by Franklin Avenue, the Franklin Avenue subway shuttle right-of-way, Montgomery Street, Sullivan Place, and Washington Avenue in Brooklyn Community District 9. A zoning map amendment to change the project area from R6A to R9D and map a C2-4 overlay proposed within 100 feet of Franklin Avenue. A zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area coterminous with the project area. A special permit pursuant to New York City Zoning Resolution Section 74-743, special provisions for bulk modification for a large-scale general development to waive certain height, tower, and tower coverage requirements in R9D districts. A special permit pursuant to ZR Section 74-533 for a 70% reduction in the number of required parking spaces for the non-income restricted units to facilitate affordable housing. The requested actions would facilitate 2 39-story mixed-use buildings totaling over 1,150,000 square feet. The development would contain 1,578 apartments, of which 50% would be affordable to households earning 50 to 120% of area median income pursuant to MIH options 1, 2, and the workforce option. The project would also provide approximately 9,678 square feet of community facility space, 21,183 square feet of ground floor retail, and 128 parking spaces pursuant to the partial waiver. Community Board 9 voted to disapprove this application on June 23rd, 2021. Oh, sure. I'm Jeff Lowell. I'm the policy director for the Brooklyn Borough President, and if everybody else would like to introduce themselves, we have
Ina Gusenfeld, Land Use Coordinator.
Ryan Lynch, Borough President Adams, Chief of Staff.
Richard Barrick, I'm the Borough President's Land Use Director.
We will now call speakers 5 at a time for in-person and virtual testimony. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. If you are testifying in person, please proceed to the first floor community room once you've made your remarks.
We will now call the first 5 speakers who all signed up to testify in person. I apologize if I mispronounce your name. Carolnault, Marvin Saporin, William Stanford, Adrian Benepe, and Alicia Boyd.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Carolnault. For the purpose of this testimony, I identify as a Marine Corps veteran, a New York City public school global history teacher, co-president of the 300 East 25th Street Block Association, and a Brooklyn resident for 30-plus years. This proposed 960 Franklin Avenue Towers is of great concern to me due to the negative effects that it will have on the current residents, the surrounding community, and the Brooklyn Botanic Garden now and in the future. These towers are being built in a space where its citizens are inadequately serviced. This community also has a 15.9% poverty rate. In addition to the aforementioned, experts have noted that the towers will damage many of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden's plants via the shadow and restricted access to the sunlight. I never thought that I would have heard an indispensable institution of higher learning, such as the BBG, and developers having to fight for resources. The garden's reach is much broader, and they continuously do far more for humanity than any developer. We share a relationship with the BBG that spans over 25 years. In addition to winning numerous awards and citations from BBG, such as the Greenest Block in Brooklyn, many of our residents, including myself, are trained urban gardeners and community stewards. The training and educational resources received are disseminated in our community. We've seen the positive effects of neighboring blocks who start their own greening, thereby mitigating urban ills such as air pollution. Throughout my visits to 35 countries over the years, I have documented natural and man-made environmental changes via thousands of photographs. There is a delicate balance between necessity, overdevelopment, and greed, and I have witnessed the negative effects worldwide, such as visible pollution, abject poverty, gentrification, etc. We have a chance to reduce these effects, this proposed project. Many of the countries that I have visited protect plants, wildlife, and spaces, such as BBG. For example, Belize protects 75% of the rainforest. Their elected officials are aware that plants are still important to our existence.
Ms. Renault, please wrap up.
I
Thank
strongly oppose the current development, since it will benefit the developers more than the community. Thank you for your time, and thank you for this opportunity to be heard.
Thank you, Ms. Renault.
Can I take the mask off? Talking?
No, keep the mask on. Sorry.
So, Borough President Adams' staff and community members, my name is Marvin Saporin, and I'm a lifelong resident of Brooklyn, and I urge you to reject any development proposal that will harm the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens. The garden's future is a great personal concern for me. I grew up in a poor immigrant neighborhood in Brownsville, and my classmates and I loved visiting the garden. In school, many of us bought flower seed packets for 1 or 2 cents from the garden and learned how to grow and take care of them in boxes we placed on our fire escapes. My daughters took their first steps on uneven ground in the gardens in Cherry Lane, and now my grandchildren are enjoying the Discovery Gardens. I want the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens to be there for their grandchildren. I understand that you're often called on to weigh competing interests, but if you read the studies conducted by experts, including those prepared for the developer, you'll see the proposed 960 Franklin Avenue development will do irreparable damage to the garden. There are many development sites available, but there's only one botanic garden, and it can't be replaced. As you know, the garden is one of Brooklyn's most precious assets, and it's increasingly an important part of the city's economy, drawing tourists who spend millions of dollars in the city and the borough, and taxpayers have already invested millions of dollars in the garden, which should not be wasted. And at the community board hearing, all members of the land use committee clearly stated that the developer's claim that this would create affordable housing was false. So I thank you in advance for acting to protect one of Brooklyn's crown jewels for this and future generations. Thank you very much, and stay well.
Thank you.
My name, for the record?
Please.
William Stanford Jr., a.k.a. Mr. X. You need to tell the BP, or should I say Teddy Long, if he wants to get elected as mayor, he needs to reject this proposal once and for all. I supported Ali B, a.k.a. Alicia Boyd, at 45 Monroe Place and 360 Adams Street on several occasions. Okay, I took time out of my busy schedule just to do that, and we've told Teddy Long and his compadres this project won't help anyone. Everyone will get displaced. Basically, it'll be New Jack City. Okay? You're basically doing what Wesley Snipes and his cronies did in New Jack City. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. Do it elsewhere. Don't do it here. Tell Teddy Long to reject this proposal, or don't bother entering City Hall, which became the bingo hall, which is formerly home to ECW. I don't get it. I mean, I seem to remember he and Stephen Levin are the reason why the Brooklyn Heights Library no longer lies at 280 Canton Plaza West. As I testified somewhere here in Brooklyn, possibly here, I know I testified and I said that's a bad idea. When it lied there, it was convenient for everyone. Everyone was happy, like Farrell Williams. First, Teddy Long opposed the project. Second, he supported it. As far as Stephen Levin goes, we already know the story with him. He just fell through the cracks. Okay? So we got a high-rise building in that spot. The library currently lies at 109 Remington Street, and there are no computers for anyone, including the children. Okay? Dismiss the project, leave the Book of Botanic Garden alone. Okay? Leave it alone, and we'll all be happy, like Farrell Williams. Okay? So Teddy Long needs to get it together.
Good afternoon. My name is Adrian Benepe, President of Brooklyn Botanic Garden. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on the catastrophic impacts of the proposed rezoning of 960 Franklin Avenue. The community most affected by this misconceived project has indicated how it feels about it. More than 57,000 people have signed Brooklyn Botanic Garden's petition opposing the project. I didn't bring the notebooks full of petitions. I thought I'd spare you that. These residents oppose this project for good reason. It would permanently damage an important neighborhood resource, Brooklyn Botanic Garden's collections, and our ability to educate children. Brooklyn Botanic Garden is a unique and venerable scientific institution, more than 110 years old, with an unparalleled range of educational and interpretive programs, all of which depend on the ability to propagate and display a diverse living collection of plants from around the world. The current zoning was put in place by New York City Planning at the request of Mayor Dinkins in 1991 to protect our living collections that need the most light. Even with modifications, the developer's plans would permanently damage these collections and educational workspaces. The developer's own EIS and accompanying arborist report clearly detail the disastrous impacts of these towers. They include the suggestion that the Botanic Garden might need to close its desert pavilion, for example. Our conservatories, greenhouses, and nurseries all lie in the direct path of the shadow of the proposed tall towers. These facilities house several dozen separate growing spaces, each with its own light, temperature, and humidity regimens. These facilities contain plant collections of international importance. To be clear, every part of the 52-acre garden is dependent on the propagation and growing facilities that would be affected by these shadows. All of our annual and perennial plants are produced there. There is no other place to accomplish this work on the site. The direct shadows on our propagation and growing facilities would have a dire impact. Moreover, I'd like to stress that this would not only impact BBG, the towers would plunge Jackie Robinson Playground into cold shadows in the afternoon for large portions of the year and also adversely impact Medgar Evers campus. We urge the Borough President, who has generously supported the Garden's community programs, to reject this gambit and protect the community and neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alicia Boyd, and I represent the Movement to Protect the People and Flower Lovers Against Corruption. The community of Crown Heights, Flatbush, and Prospect Lefferts Gardens have been fighting to protect BBG in the community since 2014. Residents conducted town hall meetings, marches, and over 500 people showed up on September the 21st, 2014, and got Community Board 9, AKA CB9, to take back a request to break the height limits along BBG. From October 2014 to June 2014, the community fought CB9's decision to pass another request and submit it to the city. Residents were arrested, lawsuits were filed, and protests occurred at almost every meeting. At the same time, BBG sold their science building to Cornell Realty, making over a $22 million profit, which resulted in the first luxury development in the area to be built right across the street from BBG. In 2018, the city passed a rezoning allowing Cornell Realty to break the height limits along BBG and build up to 20-plus stories, which BBG did not object to. A lawsuit was filed, knowing Cornell was paving the way for this development project. In January 2020, again, it was MTOP and FLAC who uncovered the smoking gun, the Parks Department memo that stated that BBG will be harmed by the project. Despite that memo, the city stated that no harm would come to BBG and planned to certify the application on November 16, 2020. In November 2020, MTOP FLAC filed another lawsuit, which caused the city to reverse its decision and state that indeed damage would be caused by the development project, and they had to redo the paperwork and certified it on February the 1st. At no point in time did BBG support the community in their resistance. This history is important to ensure that the record is set straight, that if it wasn't for the efforts of the residents of the Crown Heights Flatbush community, we would not have the mayor, the city council member, the speaker of the House, and the city planning commissioners stating that they will not support this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will now hear testimony from our online viewers via WebEx. A reminder that there is a 2-minute speaking limit for all testimony. I will now call the next 5 names. Reverend Lynn Grifo, Andy Feldman, Reuben Collin, Betsy Smith, and Pierce Hilly.
I am here.
Please state your comments.
I am Reverend Lynn Ann Grifo, resident of Bay Ridge, member, donor, and volunteer of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. I speak against the rezoning of 960 Franklin and for the preservation of the current R6A zone. The garden has been for me a beloved place of peace and beauty for 67 years. I don't like to say how old I am, but there you are. I urge rejecting the proposed rezoning or any form of upzoning because only the existing height limits can sufficiently protect the garden's collections and its very mission from significant harm. Studies commissioned by BBG show that the project's shadow cover will cause significant damage to its plant collections, and the EIS acknowledges this harm. Lowering the height from, say, 39 stories to 34 stories is no better. The EIS blatantly places all responsibility upon BBG to save its plant collections from significant harm. It is unconscionable for the developer to tell the garden to move plant collections or conservatories out of harm's way, or to switch to ineffective artificial light. 960 Franklin threatens the mission and future of the garden as we know it, and it does so, most importantly, in a pandemic year that has already resulted in a large loss of revenue for BBG. I support the creation of affordable housing in the borough, but the EIS Chapter 3 makes contradictory statements. First, that the proposed actions have the potential to bring in a higher income population. That is fact. Second, that the rezoning is expected to help preserve affordable housing in the area. That is wishful thinking. For the benefit of thousands of school students, Brooklyn's community gardeners, and every avid visitor, the rezoning of 960 must be voted down. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Andy Feldman. Okay. Okay, Mr. Feldman, could you please unmute your microphone? Okay, in that case, we will move on to the next speaker, Reuben Collin.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. I am a lifelong Brooklyn resident, as well as an appointee of my local community board. I am also the senior Brooklyn area standards representative for thousands of hardworking members of the New York City and Vicinity District Council of Carpenters, the NYCDC, many of which live and or have extended family and or strong ties to Brooklyn. It is on their behalf that I submit the statement of testimony in favor of the 960 Franklin Avenue rezoning. While the NYCDC has heard the concerns of the community, contrary to claims from a vocal minority, we contend that with over 100 members and their families living within the immediate area of the proposed rezoning, we too are stakeholders in the community. It is for this reason that we cannot in good conscience stand opposed. It would be hypocritical for the New York City District Council of Carpenters to be opposed to responsible development given the economic conditions the city is facing. Consider the open shop environment organized labor has been forced to deal with in recent years. Developments such as the one proposed at 960 Franklin Avenue do not often come with wage requirements, safety and skills training, or health and medical benefit standards. The need for the latter of these has become even more apparent after the experience of essential construction workers during the ongoing pandemic. The developer in this instance is committed to ensuring such standards are implemented as part of their overall plan. This will be a union-financed, union-built, and union-operated project, a bastion of good union jobs in what has become a landscape riddled with construction sweatshops fueled by predatory developers and contractors whose business models capitalize upon what they view as an easily exploitable workforce of color. This cycle of poverty can be broken if the proposed rezoning in this instance moves forward. We go further to remind those charged with making the crucial decisions on this venture that New York City, and Brooklyn in particular, is facing an unprecedented economic downturn. Our members and their families, again, many who live in Brooklyn, are feeling the devastating effects. And while those who stand opposed may deem construction jobs as temporary, we counter with the fact that our careers traditionally have been based upon what are perceived as a series of so-called temporary jobs. Many a union carpenter has been able to go on to have a successful career accompanied with dignity and retirement, all based on so-called temporary jobs. We must therefore 960 Franklin Avenue rezoning.
Okay, our next speaker on WebEx is Betsy Smith.
Thank you. My name is Betsy Smith, and I am speaking in opposition to the harmful rezoning of 960 Franklin Avenue. I grew up at 25 Eastern Parkway, a 6-story apartment building. As a child, I was never jealous of my friends who grew up in houses with backyards, since I had the Brooklyn Botanic Garden as my backyard. Entry was free in those days, and my friends and I sometimes went in through the Eastern Parkway entrance and out through the Washington Avenue entrance on our way to and from PS 241. Similarly, on beautiful days, instead of riding the bus all the way home from Erasmus Hall High School, I would sometimes walk through the BBG to get home. My father used to take my sister and me to the BBG when we were little. We were young enough to, air quotes, roll down the tiny hill at the beginning of Cherry Esplanade. When my father retired as an elementary school principal, he became a docent, leading groups of elementary school children on walks through the garden. When he died, my sister and I put a plaque in his memory on one of the benches. When our mother died, there were no empty benches left, so we persuaded the staff to let us put a plaque for our mother on the same bench as our father's. I invite you to go and sit on their bench next time you are in the garden. Although I now live on Cape Cod, I visit New York regularly, and every time we go to sit on what I think of as my parents' bench, there is often someone sitting there when we arrive. And when we tell them that the plaques memorialize my parents and the wonderful hours that we spent, starting as children, but throughout our lifetime in the BBG, they are delighted to share the bench with us. I have enjoyed watching the changes that have been incorporated into the garden over the decades. I'm 75 and have greeted new additions as an additional place of beauty and as a place to learn new things about our planet. But I am horrified by the rezoning plans that would threaten the beauty of this wonderful oasis. Please do not allow the rezoning to take place. The Brooklyn Botanic Garden has always maintained the proper balance between growth and preservation. Please do not jeopardize that balance. I thank you for receiving my testimony and the testimony of all the other people who have taken time to be part of this today. It's important.
Our next speaker is Pierce Hilly.
Good afternoon. My name is Pierce Hilly, and I'm a member of 32BJ. I am here tonight on behalf of my union to express our support for the proposed project at 960 Franklin Avenue. 32BJ is the largest property services union in the country, representing 85,000 property service workers in New York City, including many who live in the Crown Heights neighborhood. 32BJ supports responsible developers who invest in the communities where they build. I am happy to report that the developer, Bruce Eichner's Continuum Company, and Lincoln Equities Group has made a credible commitment to creating prevailing wage building service jobs and affordable housing at the site. This commitment is an investment in the community by providing wages and benefits that give working families opportunity for upward mobility, security, and provide permanent affordable housing. This development will also offer new affordable housing units, with 50% of those units being given preference to current Community Board 9 residents. We know that this development will continue to uphold the industry standard and provide opportunities for working families to thrive in Crown Heights. We need good paying jobs that can lift our neighbors up. We need access to housing that we can afford. On behalf of 32BJ SEIU, I respectfully urge you to approve this project. Thank you.
Is Andy Feldman available to give testimony?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please continue.
Thank you. My name is Andy Feldman. I've lived in Brooklyn since 1956, and I've visited the garden innumerable times. Surely there are people at this meeting who think filling up the sky with big buildings in the vicinity of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden is no big deal. There's actually someone here who told me that it did not bother them to see Tivoli Towers and the Ebbetsfield Apartments visible over the trees while they were walking through the Botanic Garden. Ebbets was built in 1962, Tivoli in 1974. But in 1991, the idea of more enormous buildings in the neighborhood bothered a lot of people in the community. such that they work to put in place zoning regulations limiting structures to 75 feet, 7 stories approximately. Through this collective action, citizens were casting a vote for how they wanted their neighborhood to be. What makes Continuum think it is entitled to an exception which would steal the sky, I'm saying steal the sky, from the Jackie Robinson Playground, Medgar Evers College, the plants of the Botanic Garden, the garden's hundreds of thousands of yearly visitors, and the residents of Crown Heights area? Continuum and the backers of this project seem to think that the few hundred affordable units in 960 that may not really be so affordable justify the harm the project will do. As a self-described, quote, boutique real estate development firm, unquote, Continuum is not in the business of creating affordable housing. In my opinion, that they're advocating for affordability here is simply convenient cover for their true intention, building a building which will offer magnificent window views to wealthy customers that will reap them big profits and puff up their corporate ego. If Continuum were really so caring a company, there are scores of properties all over Brooklyn that could use upgrading to help the city meet its substantial housing needs, which numbers in the hundreds of thousands of apartments. The harm of this project will clearly outweigh the good. I'm asking Borough President Adams to stand against the rezoning and against any sly building plan that would move forward around current regulations. Thank you.
We will now hear from 5 speakers in the courtroom. A reminder that once you have given your testimony, please proceed to the first floor community room. Okay, again, I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. River Fields, Nina Brown, Julia Charles, Irene VanSickle, Doris Miller.
Hello everyone, my name is River Fields. Hi everyone, my name is River Fields. I'm president of the 400 Bainbridge Street Block Association in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. I'm here today to voice my opposition against the massive development project at 960 Franklin Avenue that will cast a devastating blow on Brooklyn Botanic Garden. As president of my block association, I've hosted numerous community beautification projects where I've witnessed firsthand what greening does to a community, including building meaningful relationships, promoting community safety, and fostering community pride. In fact, my block association is currently registered in this year's Greenest Block in Brooklyn contest, where we are hard at work to make our block beautiful this summer. It is difficult to overstate the irreparable damage the proposed rezoning and development will cause to the garden, echoing throughout the borough and the city. It is in the interest of students, families, friends, gardeners, community leaders, and all lovers of the BBG that the rezoning of 960 Franklin is voted down. The Brooklyn Botanic Garden is Brooklyn's garden, and we have to do our part to preserve it and to ensure that it not only survives, but thrives. Thank you.
Hello, panelists and Borough President Adams. My name is Nina Brown. I'm Community Program Manager and an educator at Brooklyn Botanic Garden, and I've celebrated with Mr. Adams many times on Greenest Blocks in Brooklyn, and I also live just a few blocks away from this proposed project. My colleagues will speak powerfully about sunlight and plants, and this rezoning would decimate my program's mission to get free plants into the hands of Brooklyn's gardeners. But the programs I manage also support people, and the ways that their love of plants builds powerful, stable communities across Brooklyn. So I want to speak personally today about people. As the daughter of a New York City tenants' rights activist, I'd long heard about urban removal and what a disgraceful sham the so-called community input process is in city planning. And now I'm experiencing that sham firsthand. This process is indeed anti-democratic, confusing, exclusionary, rushed, and top-down, favoring the rich and real estate interests. There are so many neighbors here and online today who managed to show up against this proposal, and I'm so grateful and heartened. And yet I've heard a striking reason for why many of my neighbors are not here. They say, the process is built to defeat us, why bother? And that's understandable. Gentrification and unfettered development have so displaced, disempowered, and traumatized people that too many take it for granted that developers have free rein to build whatever the hell they want, wherever they want, to make as much short-term money as they can, bulldozing over the visions, the memories, the lives of our most vulnerable neighbors. But there is another way. As Borough President, you must take a moral stand against this disgrace of a process and this project. And possibly as our next mayor, you must do even more. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Hello, good evening. My name is Julia Charles. I'm the founder of the East 25th Street Historic District Initiative. The Brooklyn Botanic Gardens is not just a horticultural treasure in the middle of central Brooklyn. It is an institution intended to serve as a place for education, adoration, and reprieve from the hustle and bustle of our amazing city. I'm testifying today in full support of the Botanic Gardens and community leaders that oppose the erroneous, out-of-scale development in the community. The Brooklyn Botanic Gardens has fully supported the East 25th Street Historic District Initiative, which utilized landmark designation as a means to preserve both the architecture and the culture. In kind, we stand in solidarity with the activists fighting to preserve the gardens and stewards of the surrounding communities. Thank you for your time.
My name is Irene VanSickle.
You gotta keep the mask.
I know, but it's...
Just pull the mic down a little bit, it might help.
My name is Irene VanSickle, testifying on behalf of the Sierra Club, a national environmental organization with a citywide membership of 15,000 people. We urge the Brooklyn Borough President and the Borough Board to reject the variance to the present protective zoning around the Brooklyn Botanic Garden area. In the 1980s, many developers were interested in developing luxury high-rises in the area. At that time, BBG and community group organized and the city agreed to adopt a comprehensive land use plan to protect the Brooklyn Botanic Garden from shadows from high-rises, as well as protect the surrounding neighborhood of 7-story buildings. The 1991 protective zoning remains indispensable to the protection of BBG, whose botanical collections have enormous ecological and scientific value for New York City. With the proposed development for 960 Franklin Avenue, the developers are trying to circumvent around the protections of BBG and the neighborhood, not only by getting a variance, but also without an independent evaluation of the environmental impact the development will have on the garden's ecology and the neighborhood surrounding BBG. If this scheme goes through, it will no doubt energize other developers to ask for variances as well, and they will have a good reason to expect approval once the protective zoning has been breached. The Sierra Club position is that an environmental impact study should be performed by an independent agency that considered not only 960 Franklin Avenue, but also the accumulative impact of other planned developments. Sunlight is essential for all BBG's planting, and they need sunlight to prosper. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Doris Miller, and I am here as a mom and a longtime resident of Brooklyn, New York, raised in the community of Brownsville. I do not have a prepared speech, so I'm just going to speak from my heart. 3 generations of my family have enjoyed the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. My mom used to bring me there as a child, and when it became time for me to raise my child, I brought her to the gardens because I wanted her to know the earth. And all of the, various places around the city of New York and in Brooklyn where you can go and do gardening, there's no other place like the Botanical Gardens. My daughter went into the gardening program, the children's gardening program, when she was around 5, and remained there for 5 years. And some of my most wonderful memories were of her running through that garden, harvesting plants, and I fell in love with nasturtium and bringing things home to have wonderful unknown recipes with. And my daughter now just graduated high school and has loved science throughout all of those years. And she will be starting at the University of Hawaii, majoring in biology and minoring in botany. And that is a credit to the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. So I am opposed to anything that hurts the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens.
Thank you. We will now return to our WebEx speakers. Reminder again that testimony is limited 2 minutes, and we ask that you please do not clap for or between speakers. Our next 5 speakers are Linda N., Vicky Madden, Stephen Albanese, Kate Anderson, and Kathy Martino.
I go next? Or Linda?
Please continue with your remarks.
Okay. I'm Vicki Madden. I'm a longtime Brooklyn resident and teacher and frequent bringer of children and students to the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. I speak in opposition to this rezoning. Let's be clear what this is about. Continuum developers bought a parcel of land knowing full well the zoning was R6A. Apparently assuming they'd be able to change the zoning put in place 30 years ago expressly to protect the BBG's ability to grow plants for our community and our children. Do you know what has not changed in 30 years? Do you know what will not change at all in the next 30 years? The way the sun crosses the sky, the number of hours of sun in a day, the need plants have for sunlight, and the need we humans have for plants and light and gardens and green spaces. The choice is this. On one side, a community that has spoken clearly through community boards and neighbors that in opposition to this rezoning, as well as a historic Brooklyn institution with a history of serving the people of Brooklyn, especially the children of Brooklyn, including the children who play in Jackie Robinson Playground, who go to PS 375, the Jackie Robinson School, and the Ebbets Field Middle School, whose school and playgrounds will be virtually dark all hours of the day, a safety and health issue. On the other hand, we have a developer who wants to build yet another gigantic building with affordable housing, quote unquote, that is too expensive for the neighborhood, destroying the landscape and the community in the process, 1,500 apartments with all the mounds of trash and cars and air pollution, towers 430 feet tall, and the only entity to profit from this project will be the bank account of the developers. So, Borough President, whose side are you on? The well-being of the people of Brooklyn or the developer's bank account? Please oppose this rezoning. Thank you.
Okay, I believe we skipped over Linda. If we could give Linda N. the opportunity to speak. Linda, please unmute your microphone. Okay, let's give her a couple of moments and then we'll proceed to the next speaker. Okay, our next speaker is Stephen Albanese.
Hello. My name is Stephen Albanese with the Municipal Art Society, which is strongly opposed to 960 Franklin Avenue for the following reasons. Zoning. The development would be one of Brooklyn's largest, and its towers would be over 6 times taller than currently allowed. We also question the justification for R9D zoning, which typically accommodates towers facing elevated rail lines along the street. At 960 Franklin abuts a rail line that is landlocked within a block and recessed below grade. Shadows. According to the DEIS, new shadows would reach 22 of the 23 facilities studied within BBG and would last almost 4.5 hours in June. The DEIS concludes that there would likely be a long-term decline of plant health as a result. New shadows would also significantly impact Jackie Robinson Playground, completely shrouding it during several critical use times between spring and fall. The 34-story alternative would not mitigate these impacts. Affordable housing. The developer has touted the provision of affordable housing, but all of the affordable and workforce units would be for households earning more than the median income of area residents. Those provided voluntarily would be tens of thousands of dollars above the median. Special permit and zoning waivers. The developer seeks permits and zoning waivers to promote better site planning and urban design, but has not demonstrated how this would be achieved. It is also not clear how adding bulk and eliminating setbacks on the top floors would result in a slender and less impactful tower design. Transparency and accountability. In public meetings and on their website, the developer has proposed a 17-story alternative for the site, but the DEIS makes no mention of this, leaving its potential impacts in question. It must be evaluated in the FEIS. In conclusion, virtually every public official with a say in 960 Franklin's approval has expressed outright disapproval of the project. In addition to our stated concerns, the project could set a dangerous precedent, effectively giving the green light to projects that ignore the 1991 contextual zoning. MES strongly urges the Borough President to disapprove the project. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Kate Anderson.
Hello, my name is Kate Anderson. I'm a lifetime resident of Brooklyn. I grew up here and I'm a decade-long resident of the Crown Heights and Prospect Lefferts area. My family has been devout Brooklyn Botanic Garden members for as long as I can remember. I grew up learning about the plant there, I commute through it, I've taken classes there. I meet my parents for walks in it. I went on my first date in it. It holds a deeply special place in my heart, as I'm sure it does for so many others. I am passionately opposed to the proposed rezoning of 960 Franklin Avenue, which would irrevocably harm the Botanic Garden's singular collection and programs, as well as the community that so dearly loves them. Everyone here has already spoken eloquently to this, but the question of this project goes beyond the merely personal. The zoning that was put in place to protect the garden's conservatory from shadows is vital to the future of this local landmark. This project would not only hurt a centuries-old institution and a world-renowned attraction, but risk the BBG's ability to provide free, year-round education to over hundreds of thousands of children a year. I understand the need for affordable housing, construction jobs, and more, but let's not pretend this project is about serving our community. With everything in my power, I beg you to prevent this proposal, to protect this space at the heart of our incredible Bureau. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Kathy Martino.
Established the reasons why this rezoning should not take place. I did want to speak very briefly to to the question of union jobs. I'm a big supporter of unions and union jobs, but often these jobs are pitted against needs of communities. And I would like to suggest that the Borough President, particularly if he becomes the mayor, consider requiring projects built by HPD and HTC require union labor. I do hope that you oppose this rezoning, and thank you for your time.
Okay, is there a possibility of hearing from Linda before we move on to our next slate of speakers in the courtroom?
And if Linda has technology issues, we could give out that phone number so she could try calling in as well.
Okay, I'm going to, I'm sorry. Is Linda available? Great. Okay. At this time, I'm going to call the next 5 in-person speakers. Maureen OBrien, Dana McGrath, Sarah Laser, Michael Hollingsworth, and Susan Metz. Again, we ask that once you've concluded your remarks, you please proceed to the first floor community room. Okay, I'm being told that Susan Metz is no longer in the courtroom.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Maureen OBrien, the Community Field Manager at Brooklyn Botanic Garden. I work with the people of Brooklyn in community gardens, block associations, urban farms, and tree beds. I'm a longtime Brooklyn resident and homeowner. Like Mayor Bill de Blasio, I strongly oppose the 960 Franklin Avenue development. BBG is the people's garden, a treasured, necessary resource that belongs to the people of Brooklyn, New York City, and beyond. The existing zoning protects and preserves sunlight, as so many people have attested. This development would greatly damage the community greening plant propagation nursery area. We grow and donate thousands of units of plant material every year to community gardeners, urban farmers, mutual aid growers, and block associations all over Brooklyn, including neighborhoods like Canarsie, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Bushwick, Brownsville, and East New York. BBG is the heart and soul of the people of Brooklyn. When I'm working in the field outside the garden gates, I hear statements like, I visited on a class trip. It was amazing. We took plants and pond water back to the school and looked under a microscope. We learned where food comes from, that nature connects us all, how plants heal, trees make air. We went to BBG and got engaged, got married, went on a first date, took graduation photos, brought the kids, had family outings, wheeled grandma in the rose garden. At BBG, we held a memorial for Mom, prayed, mourned the loss of a friend, sought solace during 9/11, visited to stay sane during the pandemic. These milestone memories from the heart and soul of the people of Brooklyn did not happen in shadow or darkness. The importance of sunlight for a thriving botanic garden cannot be underestimated and must not be diminished. As an employee of New York City and a horticultural and community manager, I offer my expert advice that this proposed project must be stopped now. Borough President Adams, I ask that you oppose this development. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Lazarus. I'm a rent-stabilized tenant and member of the Crown Heights Tenant Union. And along with the CHTU, I oppose this rezoning. The tenant movement is clear. MIH is basically a giveaway to developers. The promises are dishonest. The promises of these developers are dishonest. 50% affordable and workforce, it's just ridiculous. The affordable is not really affordable, and the workforce label is offensive. People who make 120% of AMI are nowhere near the working class that the term is meant to evoke. And Brooklyn has plenty of 120% AMI apartments that go empty because those people have no trouble finding and getting unsubsidized apartments that actually cost less. Lest we forget, the other 50% of this building will be unaffordable because MIH is above all a perverse incentive. Adding luxury housing to the neighborhood does not make poor residents any less poor, but it does make them more vulnerable to secondary displacement. We should also remember that this development is going to apply for a 421A property tax abatement. So essentially, working class New Yorkers are going to be subsidizing the construction of housing for rich people and subsidizing the developers who are causing their displacement. Lastly, private ULURP applications bring zero in infrastructure improvements to help the neighborhood deal with the increased population. No extra trains or buses are coming, no extra green space, no extra schools. So we urge the borough president and our council member and the mayor to say no to this rezoning. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Hollingsworth. I'm a member of the Crown Heights Tenant Union. I'm a lifelong Brooklynite. I actually live 1 block away from the Spice Factory, also known as 960 Franklin Avenue, and I live 1 block away from the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens. Now, there'll be enough people here today talking about how much they love the gardens. I do as well. I grew up as an asthmatic. It was one of the only places I can go and breathe. It is crucial that it remains available to every Brooklynite and to quite honestly to people across the world. But other folks will talk about that. I want to talk about the folks who actually live in Crown Heights, like myself. Crown Heights used to be historically a Black American, Black West Indian neighborhood. We've been under siege the past decade with tons of luxury development. A lot of it masquerading as affordable, even though it really isn't affordable. In my opinion, we have done our share in terms of providing a city with luxury development. The folks who live there, you know, the MTA employees, the nurses, the cashiers, we don't need luxury housing. Folks need affordable housing. That's what we need. Yeah, we've just seen enough of it. And I also just want to say, this is kind of a farce. The council member whose district this is in has said that she opposes this project. The speaker, Corey Johnson, said he's opposed it, and the mayor said he's opposed it. So if all of them opposed it, why are we doing this? Why is the developer moving ahead? It is because, in my opinion, they've already figured out the deal, right? They've come to terms. Now they're just figuring out a price. And I think we should all be aware of that. We all are participating in kabuki theater. This is a farce. They've already determined what the final product is, what they'll say yes to. And this entire process is a joke. ULURP is a joke. And so are most of our elected officials. And this project should be rejected. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dana McGrath. I'm a native New Yorker and a longtime Brooklyn resident. I'm a strong supporter of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden and oppose the rezoning. The Brooklyn Botanic Garden is an oasis to be treasured by the entire Brooklyn community. It serves as a critical source of mental health for many, particularly given the trauma that many have suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic. I urge you and your colleagues to oppose the rezoning that would negatively impact the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, including its access to sunlight, and endanger its projects and programs, and burden animal residents and wildlife. Please protect the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, which is adjacent to the Brooklyn Museum. A massive multi-year subway construction project was just recently completed to make the Brooklyn Museum and the Brooklyn Botanic Garden wheelchair accessible to all New Yorkers and tourists. Rezoning the area to the detriment of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden makes no sense to me. Please hear the genuine sense of urgency amongst those who have campaigned for sunlight for the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. We love this garden. Please oppose rezoning.
Hey, is Susan Metz in the courtroom at this time? No. Okay. We'll call on her in the next slate of speakers. Okay, at this time, we will again hear from our WebEx participants. Heather Romero, Andrew Chicon, Tijani Liverpool, Michael Owen, and Charlotte Bloomberg.
Hi, this is Heather Romero, just confirming you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Great, thank you. I'd like to thank the staff for today's opportunity to speak. I emailed this testimony as well. Borough President Adams,
I'm a Brooklyn resident who is very concerned by the oversized towers being proposed at 960 Franklin Avenue and the inadequacies of the developer's planning and reporting. As I testified recently at the Community Board 9 meeting, I'm a mother in Prospect Heights who raised our daughter to appreciate the natural beauty at the world-class Brooklyn Botanic Garden. From babyhood to her current teenage years, the garden has literally been our backyard, and we wouldn't have survived the pandemic with our mental well-being intact if we hadn't been able to visit the BBG these past few months, inhaling fresh air, taking in the sights and sounds of its natural setting, screen-free and unplugged. I know you care about and practice healthy living and meditation. So I ask you, how many serene places do we have left in our borough that offer the access to nature that the BBG does? It's literally an oasis of well-being for millions of Brooklynites, New Yorkers, and guests from around the country and around the world. I've biked with you, Borough President, on Bike to Work days, so I know you're an environmentally focused leader. I implore you to listen to the garden staff and other experts who state that the shadow cast by the proposed towers will do irreparable environmental damage, not only to the plant collections at the BBG, but also to Jackie Robinson Playground and the surrounding neighborhood by reducing essential sunlight at these locations. This is not the affordable housing project that Crown Heights needs. Let's find a solution that honors the community and preserves the natural treasure that is the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. For us, for the next generation like my daughters, and for many more to come. Thank you so much.
Andrew Chacon.
Really talking about taking away the lungs of Brooklyn. It's another affordable housing Trojan horse. We're talking about 120% AMI. That's $100,000, $2,100, $200 for a two-bedroom. This is the same thing as Soho. It's the same thing as Gowanus. It's a waste of all our time, but I cannot believe we're talking about shading the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens. 19-year resident. Yes, we've all spent time there. We're members. Please oppose this rezone. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Tijani Liverpool. Okay, we'll come back to Tijani. Michael Owen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed with your remarks.
Yes. Simply, I would like to say that Borough President Adams must, in all good conscience, oppose the rezoning. The reasons have been stated many times by many speakers before me. I'm amazed that we're actually having to all do this. This is a terrible idea. Thank you very much for your time.
Charlotte Bloomberg.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Sure. My name is Charlotte Bloomberg, and I am a 43-plus year resident of Prospect Lefferts Gardens. As stewards of our planet, we as a people have clearly failed, but we here in Brooklyn, right now, have the opportunity to address and prevent further destruction. Brooklyn Botanic Garden is a symbol of what a city can do to protect its environment. Wise people in city government put in place zoning that would protect these 52 acres. Given that zoning protection, Brooklyn Botanic Garden invested in expanding the greenhouses, adding and increasing environments like the rainforest and desert, so that our children could experience firsthand what these environments are like, not on the pages of a book, but to be able to walk through them, touch them, feel them, be a part of it. Now a developer is choosing to build a monstrous, totally out of proportion building, non-green, that will forever radically, negatively impact Brooklyn Botanic Garden, the Jackson Robinson Playground, Edgar Evans College. Cannot allow this to happen. I ask Borough President Adams, please vote this down. Please send a message to the City Council that this, despite the need for affordable housing, this project, no way, checks off that box. Thank you for your time.
We will now call our next slate of speakers in the courtroom. First, I'd like to check if Susan Metz is available to provide testimony. Okay, we'll come back to her. Our next 5 speakers are Esteban Giron, Janine Nichols, Sohair Hassan, Jerry Ciotola, and Alice B. Ott. Again, please proceed to the first floor community room once you've concluded your remarks.
Good evening. My name is Esteban Giron. I am a member of the Crown Heights Tenant Union. I serve on the Board of Tenants PAC, and I also serve on the Brooklyn Community Board 9 Land Use Committee. I also happen to live on Franklin Avenue, less than 2 blocks from this site. I'm here because I think it's important to note how some of these facts have played out in this process. For 2 years, the ULURP committee attempted to engage this developer in good faith. We requested documents. We asked the developer to come speak to us. We did everything we could to get the documentation necessary to be able to deliberate this application. We were met with resistance every step of the way. The developer does not have, nor has it ever had, any intention of truly engaging the community in this process. If we can't trust them with the most basic engagement, we can't trust them with the largest development ever proposed in Crown Heights. And since that's actually pretty much all I had to say, except for to address the union question, this project will be built union as of right. The financing for this project was through the AFL-CIO. What the union people are saying is actually not true. This is going to be a union project no matter what. The Carpenters and 32BJ are not being forthcoming about this fact. They tried to buy a city council seat with $100,000 last week, and we shouldn't give them any more say in what happens in our neighborhood. I urge the borough president to stand with tenants and all decent human beings and reject this plan. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Janine Nichols. I'm a proud member of the Movement to Protect the People, MTOP, and FLAC, Flower Lovers Against Corruption, and I am the secretary of the Sullivan Ludlam Stoddard Neighborhood Association, streets away from where this is being built and will be cast into shadow. We had better be here today to put a second big nail in the coffin of this destructive proposal following the no vote by the community board last week. 960 Franklin is an idea that never should have made it off the back of the envelope. A cluster of 11 buildings, some of them rising over 40 stories, that would result in massive displacement of neighborhood residents while killing 50% of the plant life in the garden over 10 years by their professional estimate, and throwing eternal visual desecration into the bargain. I want to point out that we would not be here had not the people of Crown Heights since 2014, principally led by MTOP, FLAC, and the Crown Heights Tenant Union, had we not alerted, educated, and organized residents and garden visitors, organizing town halls, gathering signatures in the freezing cold, even being threatened with arrest inside the garden, by the garden, on Mother's Day for distributing flyers about the looming threat. NYPD had to tell BBG that they could not arrest us because the garden is a public space and people have First Amendment rights. Do they not know that the garden is a public space? I'm confused. MTOP in particular has been bringing and winning lawsuits and packing courtrooms since 2014. That's when we brought our first suit against Carolnault Realty, the smaller towers, 20-odd stories, between Crown and Montgomery on land formerly occupied by BBG's Science Center, which they sold for $20-odd million in 2015. And that is where this fight to defend Black Crown Heights from rapacious overdevelopment actually began. We've had precious little help from BBG, as in, precious little as in none, and I leave you to ponder that one as we do. I want to be wrong when I think, based on what I have learned in these 7 years, how the system is rigged. So the borough president can vote, any politician can vote no with conditions on a document that goes to the Department of City Planning, knowing that it will turn into yes with conditions when it gets to the City Planning Commission, which conveniently doesn't have a category no with conditions, but has a category with the term with conditions in it. So it's kind of the same thing, right? So a no becomes a yes. The politician gets to pretend that he's against, but he's actually for, and it'll be signed off on by the outgoing mayor. That's how disgusted I am with the way government operates and the way big real estate runs this city. I urge the borough president to stop this in its tracks. Thank you.
My name is Suhair Hassan. I'm from Nehemiah 10 Garden. It's in East New York. And really, the Botanic Garden is a treasure for all Brooklyn. They have so many programs for adults and children. They have so many workshops. They support all the community garden in all Brooklyn. They have the greenest block to beautify all Brooklyn and add more green, more flowers, more oxygen to the air. And that's what we need. The heat which we have, because we have less green, we have less oxygen in the air. That's why we experience all the heat that we have now. And please, we don't want to lose the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. It's a big support to Brooklyn and for all the environment. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Ciatola. I just want to state I'm opposed. I didn't prepare anything. I'm opposed to this 960 Franklin. I'm a lifelong New York City resident. I was born in Park Slope. There were only 3 gems when I was a young kid. It was Prospect Park, it was the zoo, and it was the Botanical Gardens. There was nothing else. I mean, we played ball and what have you, but I had solace in the gardens. I used to go into the gardens when I was a young child, 6 years old, 10 years old. I go to the library, go right into the gardens. You're going to wreck this place. I hope all of you read comprehensive study, the shadow study. You can't just pick up these conservatories, move them, and just grow tropicals, whether they be orchids, cacti, and just change the lighting condition. Even artificial lighting will have an effect. Really think this one over. This is not something you want to mess around with these plants. It's ridiculous. You could build housing anywhere else in the city. There's available property. I don't believe that you want to mess around with the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. It's a mistake. And I hope the borough president really takes a little time to think this one out.
Hi, my name is Alice Ott, and I am testifying on behalf of CBID, which is the Central Brooklyn Independent Democrats. We at CBID strongly urge Borough President Adams to reject any development proposal that would harm the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, one of Brooklyn's most valuable assets. We believe that the studies conducted by BBG's experts demonstrate that the best choice for the community is clear: to keep the current limited height zoning laws in place. The Brooklyn Botanic Garden provides education for children of all ages and from all neighborhoods. It's a major haven for the pollinators that our food supply depends on, and it is a research institute for sustainable practices. It preserves endangered plant species, and it provides valuable green space to all. The zoning laws around the garden were designed explicitly to protect this valuable Brooklyn asset. If 960 Franklin Avenue were given a variance, it could set a precedent for more tall and massive buildings to be built in the areas surrounding the BBG. This would endanger valuable portions of the garden and ultimately could create a situation where the entire garden could be in shadow. To allow the proposed development of 960 Franklin Avenue to be built, just 150 feet from the garden's most important sites, would be an act of vandalism on a valuable cultural and scientific icon and would be a crime against the families and the children of Brooklyn. CBID hopes the Brooklyn Borough President will join the thousands of other Brooklynites in supporting the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens Fight for Sunlight campaign. The Brooklyn Botanic Gardens is one of the jewels in the crown of New York City, and it's a national treasure that must be preserved. Thank you.
Okay, we will now hear from our WebEx speakers, followed by several individuals testifying by phone. Our next speakers are Caroline Laguidici, Kelsey Balance, Roberta Belulovich, and Lucy Coteen.
Is this unmuted?
Yes, please
Yes.
proceed with your remarks.
All right. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Caroline Lagaitis, and I grew up in Park Slope. I strongly oppose to the 960 Franklin Avenue rezoning proposal. The Brooklyn Botanic Gardens must be protected and preserved. Current zoning regulations, which limit the height of structures near the gardens, should remain in effect. The gardens provide an opportunity for New Yorkers and tourists of all ages to appreciate nature. I've enjoyed frequently visiting the gardens while growing up in Brooklyn. I continue to have a deep appreciation for it and have visited it with my husband and sons. Some specific serious concerns include the proposed development would block sunlight to Brooklyn Botanic Gardens Conservatory Complex and would compromise the garden's collections, including endangered orchids and 100-year-old bonsais. Reducing sunlight to the conservatory complex threatens the entirety of the collection because plants for every part of the garden are propagated and grown there. The damage to the garden would limit Brooklyn Botanic Gardens' ability to provide year-round free STEM education to Brooklyn's youth, more than 200,000 of whom visit each year. Casting enormous shadows on the gardens would cast destructive shadows on learning opportunities and cultural opportunities that thousands of children, teenagers, and adults now enjoy each year. As Thoreau wrote, we can never have enough of nature. Thank you.
Kelsey Balance. Again, I apologize if I mispronounce your names.
Hello. So many people have already spoken so eloquently to so many of the problems that this project would present. And yes, I am opposing this rezoning at 960 Franklin. Obviously, this would have a huge impact on the community. It would be outsized development. It would bring population growth to the area that's totally inappropriate. I want to speak about the benefits of the BBG specifically to health conditions that I and many other people suffer from. 4 years ago, I suffered a traumatic brain injury. I was unable to work for many years. And of the many symptoms that I experienced, some of them included the fact that I was incredibly and unbearably sensitive to sound. I had a great deal of difficulty with visual stimuli and visual busyness in the environment, people walking around, signs, text, those kind of thing. And the Brooklyn Botanic Garden was one of the few places I could be without being physically in pain, without suffering severe headaches, without suffering debilitating dizziness. My noisy apartment on East 18th Street was not the place. Prospect Park, especially on the weekends in the summer, was not a quiet and calm place, but the BBG was. And for myself and many other people who have neurological issues, they suffer from migraines, they're on autism spectrum disorder, they have inner ear problems, which I suffered from. These are people who need low stimuli environments. So yes, we talk about the beauty of nature, but there's also people like myself who have specific medical issues, and the BBG provides a sanctuary for us. I celebrated my 30th birthday while still recovering from that condition at the BBG because it was a calm and quiet place where I could be. And I urge you to oppose this rezoning so that people like me can have that respite. Thank you.
Roberta Belulovich.
Can I be heard? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
we can. Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Apologies for a broken webcam. I am seeking the support of Borough President Adams for the community, for the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, and against the 960 Franklin Avenue rezoning application. This is an appalling proposal. It would effectively destroy an internationally renowned resource, and even more importantly, the Brooklyn Botanic Garden is a community resource that is supported and loved by thousands who live within a short walk of the garden and who were sustained by it through the pandemic. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. And even though I now live in Manhattan, I consider the BBG an important part of my
say
life.
they're against it, but then that really means they're in favor of it and they let it slide by.
Sorry, somebody else is talking. What's going on?
Lots of envelopes.
Got
a little bunch of envelopes.
I would say, is your name on these envelopes?
May I finish?
Yes, hold on one
Hello?
second. We're trying to resolve a technical issue.
Thank you.
Okay, you can go now. Thank you. Sorry for that.
Okay, that's all right. Should I start from the beginning or just pick up where I left off?
Please pick up where you left off.
Okay. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, and even though I now live in Manhattan, I consider the BBG an important part of my life. I am a member, and I visit every chance I get. I was in attendance at the CV9 meeting on June 21st and was appalled by the bald-faced lies the developer told. The numbers showed that the so-called affordable housing would not be remotely affordable to the local community. The presenter even had the gall to suggest that the community's opposition was rehearsed and by implication untrue. Do we really need to destroy another green space to satisfy this developer's greed? Moreover, this particular green space, more than 100 years old and containing one of the world's most important Japanese-style gardens, is irreplaceable. I grew up in a family of immigrants within walking distance of the BBG. Entry was free in those days, and every day my mother's uncle would take us kids with him for a walk through the garden. We were always thrilled to see the plantings, how they grew and changed in the different seasons, and for me, it fostered a lifelong passion, and I still garden daily. My garden kept me sane during the pandemic, and the BBG did that for the local community. When it was finally able to reopen, it was an oasis in the desert that New York had become. You have heard testimony from people who know a great deal more than I about the damage this appalling proposal would cause to this world-class and world-renowned jewel in the crown of Brooklyn. What I do know is that without the BBG, Brooklyn would have a piece of its soul torn out. I strongly urge you to put the people of Crown Heights, of Brooklyn, and all of New York and the world ahead of greed and reject this application. Thank you for your attention and consideration in this vital matter.
Okay, just a reminder to our WebEx speakers to please mute yourself once you've concluded your remarks so that the next person can proceed. Our next speaker is Lucy Coteen.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Thank you. So this is simple. Zoning was put in place for a reason. Communities and community boards fight for zoning to protect what is precious, and in this case, there's nothing more precious than the complete survival of the BBG. It is not just open green space. It is a horticulture treasure that serves the community, the city, tourists, and in fact, the earth. No one has the right to take that away. The city is systematically overriding intelligent, thoughtful zoning that is hurting neighborhoods. The only beneficiaries are the developers. We see the term affordable housing used as a bludgeon to shut people up. The affordable housing is never affordable to the people who live in the area. In every case, it increases gentrification and pushes out small businesses and mom and pop shops, bringing in chain stores. Chain stores do not keep the money in the community, but send the profits to corporate headquarters, to stockholders. This office must honor the intent and purpose of the existing zoning and protect a treasure that belongs to all of us. It is not for a developer to destroy our gardens, our park, and our neighborhood. The city is awash now of thousands of empty units of housing. Why would anyone want to allow more housing to go forward, which will sit empty, and it is the taxpayers, who will pay for this atrocity? The developers receive 428 tax breaks, and homeowners' taxes go up. The city speaks about resiliency at one hand, and then we see a killing spree against nature and against trees all over the city. It must stop right here. Thank you very much. Say no to this development.
Okay, we have one more speaker via WebEx, and again, a reminder to please refrain from clapping during testimony. Our next speaker is Nicola Cox. Okay, is Nicola calling in by phone?
I didn't realize. Coming.
Okay, Nicola?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Sorry, I stepped away from the computer. I thought I had a long way. Thank you. My name is Nicola Cox, and I'm president of the Sullivan Ludlam Stoddard Neighborhood Association, and a member of Community Board 9's Land Use Committee, a member of FLAC, the Flower Lovers Against Corruption, and an alum of BBG's Children's Garden. To say it short and sweet, I know and love BBG and this community. My association's blocks are between Bedford and Rogers Avenue and are made up primarily of 1 and 2 family homes. Given our location, we will be directly impacted by this project. I'm here today representing my neighbors, many who have been fighting to protect and preserve this neighborhood for decades, buying homes despite redlining, forming neighborhood watches to fight crime waves, and now fighting out of context development. We are eternally grateful to Alicia Boyd for literally going door to door to let us know that our community was targeted for rezoning by DCP, Department of City Planning, in 2014. While others said, you can't fight City Hall. If the developers want this community, there's nothing we can do. My neighbors said, we're willing to fight. So we fought against allowing DCP to rezone this community, including joining lawsuits. We fought against Cornell Realty's projects to attempt to break the 1991 height restrictions put in place to protect BBG, including joining lawsuits. And now we're fighting against the 960 Franklin Avenue project's attempts to once again break the height restrictions, including joining lawsuits. Many of my neighbors are now seniors, some in their 80s, 90s, and even hundreds, yet they come out to court hearings, ULURP meetings, town halls, and even protests. Many more would be here today if it wasn't for the temperature and the last-minute notification by our borough president. The way we see it, many of our elected officials haven't been willing to protect us. So we have to continue to fight for ourselves. Every day that our community can see the sky and has sunlight is a victory for us. So we now pray that this time our elected officials will stand up for our community and vote a straight no on this project. Thank you.
Okay, we will now take a list of speakers by phone. Is that list available? It's just phone numbers, okay.
Oh, well, we had...
Okay, hello, please state your name.
Only 2 people spoke in favor of letting the thing go through. And those 2 people were people who work in the building trade. And everybody else was very eloquent in most cases and very articulate. And now they're going to take phone calls from through the phoning thing. So people, they had speak already were people who were What?
These are numbers, so I'm going by the list of numbers.
No,
I have you in the next 5 speakers.
Okay, how come you skipped over the in-person and doing on the phone?
We're alternating.
Well, they were. You had 5 people speak on the phone.
Okay, do we have the next caller? If we do not, we'll move on to the slate of in-person speakers. Okay. All right, our next 5 speakers are as follows: Gina Quinzani, Julia Bryant, Elizabeth Peters, Ken Baer, and Cheryl Scott. Again, please proceed to the first floor community room once you've concluded your remarks.
Hi, can I start?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Gina Quinzani.
If you could come closer to the mic.
Is that better? Okay. My name is Gina Quinzani. I'm a retired New York City public school teacher of 26 years, and I'm speaking to honor my former students, who, yes, I brought in the thousands to the garden, to Prospect Park, because my first 10 years of teaching, I taught in the complex of the Farragut, Walt Whitman, and Fort Greene housing projects. So the kids are growing up totally in a built environment. Also, many times, once they got home from school, they could not go outdoors. So this was a thrill for them to go to the garden. But what I really want to address, because this is about the 4th time I've sent or spoken because I can't believe that we're still talking about this. But today is June 29th. It's 8 days after the summer solstice. We're in our second heat wave. Now, I used to work in my classroom May and June. It was 90 degrees at 8 a.m. My poor little 8-year-old kids with their shining faces, it was awful. I used to spray them with the plant sprayer because it was so hot, and then the floor got slick. We had to stop that. So believe me, going to the Botanic Gardens was a joy. Also, do you know you can teach anything through nature? Anyway, instead of planning for the future of more extreme heat and frigid weather, we are planning to build a behemoth structure that increases our built environment while simultaneously reducing our green and open spaces, the garden and the Jackie Robinson playground, as well as crushing our souls. This constitutes an environmental injustice in Brooklyn's most densely populated districts. Do you, in all clear conscience, think that that's a humane act to foist on us who live here? I have plenty more to say, but my time is up. Thank you.
My name is Julia Bryant. I'm here to give a perspective to this hearing. It's ridiculous that we're here at all, that we have to beg the city to save a botanic garden. As far back as 2014, the members of Movement to Protect the People realized that this upzoning would not only displace a well-established low and moderate income community, but it would also cast a shadow on a beloved and world-class botanic garden. In April 2018, I came on board to join this fight. We held town halls to educate the community. We held a number of protests in front of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. They were mute. They even took down our flyers. When we went to meet with them during their Fight for Sunlight exhibit, which was so small it was difficult for us to find, they explained that because of their funding from the city, that they were unable to assist us in the protest of this upzoning. Eventually, the Movement to Protect the People sued the city and council member Lori Cumbo and as pro se lawyers. I am proudly part of that legal team. I was disappointed and shocked when I heard and saw the developer's attorney present a letter written by Scott Mayberry, the former president of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, that said the garden was not in opposition to Cornell Realty's project that would break the height limit that was put in place in 1991 to protect the garden. In May 2020, we won that part, the first part of the upzoning, and the Crown Street project was halted. The second project in line, this project, we call the Monster. It came in review in the Department of City Planning. I personally heard Marissa Largo, the chair of DCP, explain that the project only came before the commission because it was sent by the council member, Lori Cumbo. As I said, we didn't have to be here. We were put at risk because of the short-sightedness of our council member. In closing, now the Brooklyn Botanic Garden is here. I'm glad to see them. But frankly, I have to wonder, why did it take them so long? They had countless opportunities for them to help us and support.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Peters. I've lived in Brooklyn for 22 years, and I've worked at Brooklyn Botanic Garden for 14 years. I've been following this proposal since the developer filed the request for the extreme upzoning over 2 years ago. It is clear that the community does not want this project, and there's no question that constructing something this massive in this location will harm the garden's plants. Others are speaking to that. I want to recognize the diligence of Community Board 9 and highlight their resolution that no modifications should be allowed to this proposal. I hope everybody has read the full resolution by Community Board 9, and they have, or actually over the past 2 years, I've had the opportunity to sit in on many of their meetings, the monthly meetings, committee meetings of the ULURP committee and the housing committee. I've had the opportunity to watch them examine and discuss this proposal at great length over this extended period of time. In ULURP, the community board is the first to weigh in because they represent those most affected by local land use. Community Board 9 has asked that modifications be disallowed. If there are any alternative proposals for this site, they should be submitted as a new application with proper scoping studies and documentation, and allowing the full opportunity for the community board to evaluate the proposal and provide their recommendation. I hope that the borough president and other city officials will respect this request. No modifications. Zoning laws are put in place so that everybody knows what is allowed and can make their plans accordingly. When citing its nursery complex, Brooklyn Botanic Garden made plans based on the zoning restrictions in this neighborhood. There's no reason for any developer to expect that these protections would be abandoned in this extreme manner. Please disallow this proposal without modification. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ken Bear. I've been a resident of Brooklyn for over 40 years, many of which, well, just about since the time that I moved here, I have visited the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. I'm here tonight to speak in opposition to the rezoning that the developer of 960 Franklin Avenue has requested. Per an edition of Webster's Dictionary, one of the definitions of a garden is, quote, a place for public enjoyment planted with trees, flowers, etc., end quote. In order for a garden to flourish, it needs an abundance of sunlight. Any significant amount of shade will have an adverse effect on the garden. The proposed towers nearby would cast shadows over the Brooklyn Botanical Garden. The green that residents want is vegetation, not money that developers will reap or funds that will go to elected political campaigns who oblige those seeking zoning variances. We respectfully request that Borough President Adams renounce these builders who want to erect high-rises in the name of some affordable housing that most in the Crown Heights area cannot afford. True affordable housing can be built without harming the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. Mr. Adams, please do what is right and follow the recommendation of Community Board 9. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cheryl Scott. I am so happy to be here and so happy to see that everybody here thinks like I do. You know, they say great minds think alike. And you all are using the same words that were coming from my heart: monstrosities, building block, structures. They look like Lego buildings. And there's an old adage that says, no rest for the weary. So here we are, after living 30, 40, 50, 60 years in our community. The fight continues. The fight continues to preserve the beautiful homes that our parents put together for us, their backyards, my father, he asked me, he said, Cheryl, when we pass, will you continue to take care of our home? Because that home was like their big mansion. So when he meant that, he meant the museum, which they have some kind of something over the museum, the Brooklyn Museum, the Botanical Gardens. My time is up. And everything, to preserve everything that people have worked so hard to have. And that is just my thought. And I have no doubt that President Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams will take charge, because if you notice, whenever there's news to be had on any of the communities, Bensonhurst, Crown Heights, Bay Ridge, he has always been there in the media. So the fight continues. We can do this. Don't let them take over our communities, and thank you.
Okay, we now have a couple of speakers via WebEx, Elizabeth Cohen and Thomas Chisena.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Thank you. I hadn't prepared anything to say this evening, but I am a 20-year resident of Prospect Heights. My name is Elizabeth Cohen, and I and my husband, we are both decades-long union members. And I would like to speak to the two people who opposed, or rather who supported the project, because, I'm all in favor, I'm very, very in favor of union labor. However, there is nothing inherent in there, that they don't inherently lose work by this project not being built where it's being proposed to be built. And I am vehemently opposed to the rezoning project of 960 Franklin Avenue. And the fact that it should get turned down and that building should not be developed in that location does not take away work from my sisters and brothers in the locals of the Carpenter local and the building management local. They will all get work wherever a replacement development is. And so many people have spoken so eloquently about the botanical garden and the sheer cultural treasure that it is, and I concur with that. And to cause its death by building this particular building in this location is it's absolutely a travesty. And a development that could have true affordable housing, and I agree with what so many people have also said on behalf of the actual affordability of housing developments. It can be, there are so many other locations that it could be done in, and all of those union jobs would still exist in a different location, and I support that they exist, but not in this location. And I thank you for your time. Thank you. Please oppose.
Thomas Chisena.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go on.
Thank you. I would like to emphasize the permanence of this decision. Once those towers are built, the sunlight is gone and it's never coming back. It's gone forever. Those towers will never be taken down. The sunlight will be gone from the Jackie Robinson playground. The sunlight will be gone from the Medgar campus. The sunlight will be gone from the Medgar Library. The sunlight will be gone from the Brooklyn Botanic Garden Conservatory. Please remember that we don't own the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. It is not ours. Our obligation goes deeper. Our obligation from our ancestors who bequeathed this legacy to us is to preserve and protect this legacy for our children and their children and their children's children. Please retain the zoning. Thank you.
Okay, we will now continue with our next slate of speakers in the courtroom. William Antosi, Sonal Bhatt, Barbara Kurland, Leonard Paul, and Rowan Blake.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi. My name is William Antosi, William Olmsted Antosi III, actually. I am the living relative of Frederick Law Olmsted, the original landscape architect of Prospect Park, Central Park, and the family members who laid out the Botanical Garden. I am a practicing architect here in Brooklyn. Been practicing for 15 years. I worked with some of the most renowned architects in the world, Renzo Piano and Diller Scofidio Renfro, on some large projects just like this. I fear that the Botanical Garden will eventually suffer a death by 1,000 cuts. And saying that it's just some shade for just some time is something that is easy to overlook. But it's not a criticism of one building. It's a criticism, or rather an urge to the city for a moment to reflect on the zoning decisions that have been made and consider basically a course correction. So there will always be a desire to build in this area and build tall. The question is, what is the precedent that you're going to set? It's flattering that the tower desires to be right next to the Botanical Garden, and it should just reinforce your understanding of that it is one of Brooklyn's greatest assets. Something I like to often ask is, what is the 100-year plan? What do you see, or what do you envision Crown Heights and the Botanical Garden being in 100 years? And how do you plan to get there? So do you want the Botanical Garden to be harmed? No. Do you want people to continue to have the desire to build and live next to it? Yes. Can you have both? Yes. But it has to be thoughtful and with compassion and intelligent urban planning and design. Thanks.
Hi there. My name is Sonal Bhatt, and I am the Vice President of Education and Interpretation at Brooklyn Botanic Garden. And so I have the privilege of speaking about the programs in opposition of this proposal. BBG's education programs were founded over 110 years ago on the idea that hands-on experiences and immersion in nature creates lifelong learners and lovers of nature. The greenhouse and conservatories are crucial to this. Today, BBG has over 24 programs, mostly free or highly subsidized, serving some of the most high-need audiences in New York. We serve 130,000 children every year through direct programs, and we see 250,000 children visiting the garden every year. We have extensive teacher education programs that are present in all 5 boroughs and profoundly impact and strengthen in-school science learning. Our community greening programs reach more than 70,000 residents, and we support more than 100 community gardens. The conservatory space provides a unique opportunity for children to immerse themselves in nature in varied biomes, and basically, the environmental education at BBG doesn't stop in the winter. We just need to bring them inside in the conservatories. The plants that serve and fuel all these programs and so many more start with our valuable education collection housed in our greenhouse and our nursery, where we propagate and care for all the plants we give away, 15,000 in community greening alone in a year. The proposed rezoning allows for massive towers that would cast a shadow on BBG, its nurseries, its conservatories, and the consequences would be long-lasting, as everybody said. I urge you to oppose this proposal. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to the Borough President's Office to speak in opposition to this project. My name is Barbara Curlin. I'm a staff member at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. I'm the Director of Learning and Partnerships, and I teach and learn with all of the garden's programs that teach and learn with schools. I am here to speak in opposition to the proposed rezoning that would permit the construction of buildings that would take away the light that plant collections at the garden receive and threaten the survival of the plants. Children, youth, teachers, and families visit the garden in all seasons. Imagine standing under a banana plant with third grade students. Snow is covering the ground outside in Brooklyn, but we're warm and we're in awe of how tall this banana plant is and the bananas hanging above us. And one of the students asks you if you need help cutting down those bananas because he can show you how. He knows how, because he's done it at his grandparents' house. The plants in the Steinhardt Conservatory, the desert, the tropical, and the warm-temperate plants allow us to make observations, to pose questions, to explore phenomena about plants and the environment in authentic and tangible ways. They are also a place where, without leaving Brooklyn, many can visit the places they or their families call home any month of the year, any season of the year. It's a place where stories are told, knowledge is shared. Plants are powerful. The collections impacted by shadows cast by buildings that exceed the current zoning limitations are valuable resources for all our education programs, and you just heard Sonal speak to that. Our teen apprentices who engage visitors with the carnivorous plants, which is what everybody wants to see when they come to the garden. The pre-K learners who actually tower above the bonsai trees, which is, when can you do that, right? Anywhere else. Adult learners in our continuing education programs who value the trail of evolution. Participants in our memory tours, and students like the students from New York City Tech from Climate U. Please protect and preserve our plants for all learners. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Leonard Paul, and I'm the foreman of the Steinhardt Conservatory at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. I'm also the president of Local 374 of District Council 37. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you today. You know, our conservatory is a year-round operation. We're open in the middle of winter when the temperature dives below 0 degrees to the middle of summer when the temperature soars over 100 degrees. We're a special place for our visitors, displaying 4,500 different taxa of plants ranging as far away as Africa, Asia, Australia, North, South, and Central America. As you enter the conservatory, the tropical pavilion looks and feels like you're in a real rainforest. You're greeted by a towering 65-foot-tall mahogany tree. You can see fruit trees such as banana, papaya, mango, guava, starfruit, jackfruit, soursop, cacao, coffee, literally with fruits hanging from them. In a warm-tempered pavilion, a Wallamine pine tree welcomes you. Now, this tree was once thought to be extinct by botanists in the wild. Our desert pavilion displays cacti from the Old and New World, including the Mojave and African desert. Our aquatic pavilion displays a vast collection of orchids, including the tiger orchid, one of the largest orchids in the world. We also are very proud to have one of the largest bonsai trees collection in the Northeast. The 960 Franklin Avenue project will have a catastrophic and devastating impact on these growing areas due to the shadow casting. Without adequate sunlight, plant health will suffer, resulting in many species unable to produce flowers and fruits and making them susceptible to pests and diseases. Our nursery will not be able to produce the seedlings that is needed. You know, in order to protect and maintain the health and longevity of BBG's world-class plant collection, we must keep the current zoning and firmly oppose any rezoning. And I want to concur with one very famous saying, just say no to 960. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Rowan Blake, Vice President of Horticulture at Brooklyn Botanic Garden. Plants need sunlight to survive. For that reason, I oppose the proposed rezoning. In my EIS testimony, I detailed the 7,000 plant species and cultivars in our glasshouses and nursery that the proposed development would directly harm. Today, I will focus on the technical shortcomings of the developer's EIS, Environmental Impact Statement. In spite of these shortcomings, their own consultants admit the proposed development will harm the garden. 1, the developer's EIS fails to respond to the city agency requests to account for the full impact of shadows on BBG's collections. For example, the developers were advised to assess impacts to healthy plant growth, not just the survival of our collections, and that it's not sufficient to apply general seeker planning guidelines to determine impacts. The developer's assessment ignores these. But in spite of the failure to truly measure the loss of sunlight on the collections, their own report admits that project-generated shadows would lead to an impact on natural resources. 2, the developer's EIS ignores the expert guidance of the arborist report they themselves commissioned. For example, the experts say it is especially important to maximize light during the short days of the northeastern winter, so shading at that time may cause the most serious issues. In spite of this guidance, the developers used the seeker guidance to claim 0 hours of shade, no shadows whatsoever, would be caused by their development in winter on the desert and tropical pavilions. This is not the case. 3, the developers repeatedly opine that the garden could continue to care for the plant collections by adjusting the rooftop netting or supplementary lights to ensure the health of the plants over time. And yet the developers' own experts state that artificial lighting, although rapidly improving, cannot imitate natural solar light. There is no substitute for sunlight. The current zoning must remain. I urge the Borough President to reject zoning proposals that would deprive Brooklyn Botanic Garden of the full range of sunlight it needs year-round. Thank you.
Okay, we will continue with the next slate of speakers in the courtroom, starting with Ann Goodrich, followed by Mary Catherine Roloffs, Isabel Wacker, Philip Macaluso, and Pamela Pettyjohn.
Good evening, buenas noches. So I am Goodrich. I'm a resident for over 34 years. So the reason why I oppose the 960 Brick Prep project is called the Baker Switch scanner. So the overcrowded system, number 1, schools are gonna get worse, such as Jacob Robinson campus, PSC 335, PS 231, Prophet High School campus, or Carl Barton High School campus, and Royal Mega Everett College. Transit during rush hour will get worse by the day, or especially during rush hour. Let's say like 9 or 10 years from now. Especially you have a buses, you got plenty of buses, you got plenty of subway lines. We're gonna get way thicker like that, and some of you will get rise up. Maybe for like a job opportunities, like go to be by say $5 to $9,800, $550 by the next decade. Environmental as well as climate change. The garden must deserve light, air, and water for visitors to come and see the green space, to go grow our own fruits and vegetables, and to make sure that to preserve any environment where possible. Third, community preservation. Community land trusts need to be the key issue, and have community control of low income and middle class residents and homeowners for families making 20% AMI to 60% AMI who live at Community Board 8 and Community Board 9. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Mary Catherine Roloffs. I'm a volunteer at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, and I'm here because I oppose changing the zoning laws. I've been battling Parkinson's disease for the last decade, and the garden has been an invaluable part of my therapy. It's proven, it has a powerful, I'm so sorry, it has provided a peaceful outdoor space, and science has proven to be therapeutic, not only for those who struggle with Parkinson's, but other issues, diseases like mine. You've heard and will hear repeatedly how valuable BBG is to Brooklyn. Much has been written over the last couple days about concern on New York City's ability to still have tourism be a stronghold. I want to point out that for over 100 years, the Brooklyn Botanic Garden has been an international destination. Close to 1 million visitors come each year from all over the world. I'm sure that you don't want to be remembered as the policymakers who stripped the city of an asset that has been so useful for so many people for short-term considerations. Please let your legacy be that of preservation and protecting the Brooklyn Botanic Garden from development that would do lasting and irreparable damage. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Isabel Wacker. Eat the mic. Huh? There we go. My name is Isabel Wacker. I've lived in Brooklyn for over 40 years, and I've been a member and a volunteer at BBG for over 20 years. I'm currently the president of the BBG Auxiliary, which is a 200-person organization consisting of members and supporters of BBG. I think if we've learned anything in the pandemic, we've learned we need green space, science education, and we need to continue to strengthen community ties. BBG supplies all these needs: world-class garden, extensive education programs, and yet it is still very much a community garden. The members of my organization come from all over Brooklyn. They come from all walks of life, and they come from all economic situations. And they support BBG, not only because it's a great place to reconnect to nature, but because it's a great place to connect with each other. We work side by side, we stroll side by side, we learn about plants, we learn about other people's communities, we learn about each other. And we take that knowledge back and we disseminate it. And that, I think, is a very important thing given what we've just been through. This is an enormous community asset for all the reasons others have stated in much better terms, but also for the community of volunteers, supporters, and visitors who love this garden. It's a fabric of their life. It's the fabric that weaves Brooklyn together. So please, don't harm the garden. Vote no. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Philip Macaluso. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, because I speak not only for myself, but I'm the DC 37 chapter chair at Brooklyn Botanic Garden, and I speak for all the union workers there. And we want to say that not only do we grow plants, but we grow jobs at Brooklyn Botanic Garden. And it's not just a few jobs in horticulture. It's not just the greenhouses. It's the entire garden. We have custodians, security guards, teachers, people that work in visitor services, clerical work. And then there are all the gardeners and all the horticulturalists. We have one of the very few programs in New York City where you can get training as a horticulturalist, as a gardener. We hire people at entry level, and they progress all the way through to retirement. So I'm, excuse me, I'm a benefit of that, right? When I wanted to learn horticulture, everybody said, pay me $20,000 and you can learn how to be a gardener. I went to BBG, they said, I'll pay you, come be an intern. So I just want to emphasize that any threat to the core mission of BBG is a threat to long-term, good-paying union jobs. Thank you very much.
Sir, Mr. Macaluso, can you tell me how many people are employed at the garden?
There are currently 96 union members employed at BBG. I don't have the complete number for all the people that work at the garden because it's not all union. We currently struggle for, so while we're at currently 96, there are many union positions that are unfilled at this time because of economic conditions. So more pressure on the garden, less money for the garden, fewer union jobs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Pettyjohn. I'm the president of Coney Island Beautification Project. I need to contribute to the conversation the fact that BBG casts broad sunlight across all of Brooklyn. Proof positive, after the devastation of Superstorm Sandy, when the Coney Island community needed emotional uplifting, BBG rose to the challenge. The garden answered Coney Island Beautification Project vaguely described call for assistance in beautifying our street tree beds, public spaces, community gardens, etc. BBG stepped forward, becoming a valuable resource between Coney Island Beautification Project and youth and senior groups, churches, schools, merchants, tenant associations, homeowners, social and civic organizations. The members of Coney Island Beautification Project are part of over 70,000 Brooklyn residents that participate in Brooklyn's community greening programs each year, such as the Community Garden Alliance, the Greenest Block in Brooklyn, Making Brooklyn Bloom. The success is testimony to BBG. Brooklyn Botanic Garden blooms as a teaching hub for gardeners and educators across New York. BBG has helped us build horticultural knowledge to support our community in response to the devastating effects of Superstorm Sandy. They have equipped us with tools to build community engagement through gardening. The greenhouse under threat by proposed 960 Franklin Avenue development grows plants that are displayed at BBG, along with thousands of plants that are given away to schools, community groups such as ours every year. What starts out as a small seedling in that greenhouse grows to become BBG's stunning, world-famous botanic gardens that it is, that also go to live in community gardens and streetscapes across the borough, greening Brooklyn far and beyond the garden gates. I had to cut my speech short, so I'm just going to go with the last line. Don't turn out the light. Join the fight for sunlight. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will take our remaining speakers via WebEx. And then we'll continue with our speakers in the courtroom. We have Frederica Brooks.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Great, thank you. My name is Frederica Brooks, and I've lived in Brooklyn for over 60 years. I grew up in Flatbush, and I now live just a few blocks from the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. I've been going to the garden since I was a child, and in fact, my father had a children's garden plot there 100 years ago. I'm a longtime member of this most precious jewel of Brooklyn, and the current zoning was wisely put in place 30 years ago to explicitly protect this jewel. The proposed change to zoning would enable construction of 39 or 34-story buildings at 960 Franklin Avenue, doesn't matter which, right across from the garden. These buildings would block critical sunlight, causing irreparable permanent damage to the collections. And with all this damage, this development would not even provide significant, truly affordable housing units, nor sufficient parking. In the past 16 months, the Brooklyn Botanic Garden has been a place of respite for all of us who were otherwise trapped in our apartments by the pandemic. We need no more proof of the value of this precious Brooklyn resource. I strongly urge Borough President Adams to leave the current zoning in place to protect the garden and the community. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next speaker is Sandy Wren.
Okay, I have heard so far on this issue at least 7 hours of testimony, and it's mostly in opposition to this proposal. There were a few people who spoke for this proposal, and they didn't make any sense at all. So basically, I've not heard any reason why this proposal should go forward. Today, when our entire country is experiencing an unprecedented heat wave, I can't even imagine why we're talking about this. This is a garden we're trying to protect. This is the future of the planet that we're trying to protect. My favorite memory of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden is 4 generations in my family. We were walking my grandmother in her wheelchair while I was pushing my daughter in her stroller in the cherry garden, under the cherry blossoms. I would like that to be able to happen for my family to continue and other families. Please oppose this. Thank you.
Okay, if we don't have any more WebEx speakers at this time, I will announce the next slate of speakers in the courtroom. Veronica Seaton, followed by John Oshima, Kenneth Bromberg, Virginia Shu, and Trevor Baldwin. And again, I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
Hi, my name is Veronica Tzitin, and thank you for hearing my testimony. I am seeking your support against the 960 Franklin Avenue rezoning. I've been a member of BBG for over 20 years, and throughout that time, my 2 children have been exploring the beautiful grounds and enjoying activities that strengthen their love and respect of nature. It has been an incredible asset and a unique educational experience for the whole family, and I'm forever grateful that we have such a vital environmental and educational resource in our community. I am also a registered landscape architect and care deeply about the protection of natural resources and historic integrity of BBG. From my 30 years as a practicing RLA, I'm fully aware of a disastrous impact that shade cast by the 39-story towers would have on the plants in the conservatories, greenhouses, and nurseries of BBG. But the proposed development will not only negatively affect the plant collections in the greenhouses and the mature trees that grow nearby, it will forever alter the visual and aesthetic experience of the visitors to BBG and to nearby Prospect Park and Lefferts Homestead, which, by the way, are both listed on National Register of Historic Places. In my professional opinion as a landscape architect, and I've worked on every aspect of design from planning to develop design to construction supervision with many architects, developers, and contractors for over 30 years, I see this as a cynical attempt to market a luxury housing development right next to the beautiful botanical garden while carelessly destroying the very resource the developer will use to attract the buyers. I respectfully request that the 960 Franklin Avenue rezoning application be denied by Brooklyn Borough President's office. Thank you.
Borough President Adams, staff, and fellow citizens, my name is John Oshima. My wife, Laura Hulbert, and I are opposed to the zoning change for the building at 960 Franklin Avenue. Long after the developer has left, taking his and hers profits with them, 2 problems that the building will exacerbate will go on, having an outside impact on the lives of people in the local area and the city at large. They are social inequality and climate change. Elected officials express interest in addressing the inequities which are such a striking fact in our city, and yet green-lighting a development dominated by unaffordable units in a neighborhood of mostly less well-off Black and brown people goes directly against that mission. Could there be a more potent metaphor for inequality than a shadow cast on a neighborhood playground and much of a nearby college campus? Would we even be here today if that neighborhood was wealthy and predominantly white? Climate change. The impacts become ever clearer and will get much worse. In the struggle to change that deadly trajectory, the Botanic Garden is an essential worker, helping people appreciate and understand the natural world with which we must coexist if we are to survive. The inspiration it gives, and with your help will go on giving, is priceless. To educate, the garden needs seedlings like a school needs books. How can it provide quality programming for thousands of school children for years to come if it can't even cultivate the seedlings necessary for that mission? Finally, I would like to speak directly to you, the staff, because we are here together in this space today. Distrust, even hatred of government, has become a destructive and contagious social fact. This moment is a personal opportunity for you to prove to cynics that you are not willing participants in a sham process. Just say no, do it now, for the many and for the future.
My tomatoes from staff, and additional training that I received from the Botanic Garden through various publications. To sum it up, I think we should remember what happened with Pennsylvania Station, because once that decision was made, everything sort of disappeared. And due to technical difficulties, I just lost my copy of something I wanted to say, so let's see if I could remember it. I asked Joni Mitchell to come here today, but she couldn't make it. They paved Paradise and put up a parking lot with a pink boutique and some other hot spot. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? They paved Paradise and put up a parking lot, which isn't literal, but it's allegorical. Thank you. I'm opposed to changing the zoning.
Hi, so I will speak the testimony that Virginia will give in ASL. Good evening, Brooklyn Borough President Adams and his staff. My name is Virginia Hsu, and I'm a graduate of the Brooklyn Urban Gardener Program. It has taught me a lot, what I can do for the community. It has opened a lot of doors for me, from meeting wonderful people in the Brooklyn community. It was a huge honor to teach workshops in the nursery, in the greenhouses, with deaf people and also hearing persons who were thrilled to take my workshops and create wonderful projects like kokedama, Japanese mothballs, and plant propagation. They are looking forward to taking more workshops because they feel their spirits are uplifted. BBG is a safe space and gives them a sense of community. Please, President Adams, do not let the developers take away this sense of community, and please oppose the development. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Trevor Baldwin. I love BBG. I went to BBG with my friends. It is where our friends take their time to enjoy plants. We love seeing rare plants and flowers that BBG took great care to grow. This project will take away the light from those plants. We want to go to BBG, not faraway places. Is there a place where we can take workshops to learn how to take care of our plants? Where will we find a new place to replace the loss of light? BBG is very important to our community and all of us.
We have one more speaker via WebEx, Matthew Block.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please continue.
I just chatted you this message, but there was a question from someone on the panel asking how many employees there are. There are over 250 employees and over 600 volunteers. The annual budget is also over $16.2 million. Thus, one of the greatest supporters of the local economy. It holds hundreds of weddings and other events, which also support other local businesses. And certainly at a time when Eric Adams needs local community support more than ever, the number of people who would lose their jobs and be otherwise negatively affected if the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens is harmed would be extremely negative on his reputation and on his on the ability for him to be an effective leader. So I'm strongly against the proposal for rezoning. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any more speakers on WebEx? Lisa Curtis.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Great. My name is Lisa Curtis. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Last week, I testified at the Community Board 9 meeting in strong opposition to the 960 Franklin development. I spoke from a personal perspective of how important I feel the garden is. I ended up learning a great deal about other destructive impacts of the proposal. Some of the many things I learned are the building is monstrously out of scale with the neighborhood. The precedent would be disastrous and far-reaching beyond just this one development. The so-called affordable housing is not actually affordable to the neighborhoods of Community Board 9. The community has deep concern about the volume of garbage 1,500 apartments would create. The equation used by the developer to request parking waivers is cynical. It does not include the so-called affordable apartment units, making a deceitful assumption that these residents would not have cars. The darkness of the shade would also cover Jackie Robinson Playground and impact Medgar Evers. I also learned how very many Brooklynites have parents and grandparents who have gone to the garden and want to be able to bring their children and grandchildren there. The Brooklyn Botanic Garden is a treasure, an oasis, and a sanctuary. The rezoning ask is a request to waive protections that were specifically put in place to protect it. The developer seems disingenuous, knowing this from the beginning, and yet proposing a building which is 6 times taller than what is allowed. Not just a floor or two, but some 30 floors more. It's unbelievable, really. We've learned powerfully over the past year that green space is crucial to mental and physical health. It is vital to protect in our intensely urban environment, and the Botanic Garden is a green space of specific and unparalleled beauty. It is irreplaceable. It seems deeply wrong that the developer should have any possibility of having such a destructive impact on a community, on a commonly shared resource, which is treasured by so many. Treasured by those who can walk to one of the entrances, treasured by those in the city who come from another borough, treasured by visitors to the city from afar, treasured by children who grew up here, treasured by those who learned there, treasured by the international community as a place of learning and curation. How can such selfish greed for personal gain against the community's wishes be allowed? Please vote against the 960 Franklin development. Thank you for your time, and thank you to all in my community who spoke so movingly about the garden and taught me so much about why they are opposed to this development.
Our next speaker via WebEx is Donella Bracey.
Hi, yes, I just want to all night that frequents the garden. Not only that, I'm an educator. And one year I had to teach a unit on the ecosystem to my students. And although they seemed to grasp the concept in the class, it wasn't ecosystems and greenhouses environment that they got it. And I never mentioned to the students they were going into these simulated environments. They just shouted out to me, Ms. Bracey, this is the rainforest. That's the things you said the rainforest has, so this has to be the rainforest. And the entire class agreed. How many times do students from impoverished areas in New York City get to come to a place and experience, recognize, and enjoy the And not only did these children experience something grand, but I as an educator received feedback without a test on how much my students have learned. They were able to connect classroom and real environment to and a major reason that I add, that the Brooklyn Botanic Garden must be protected. Mr. Adams, New York City isn't short of buildings. They aren't short on lots that can provide affordable housing. And especially impoverished students living in New York City can get tangible STEM education, and we know that STEM is our future. So we want to protect institutions like the Brooklyn Botanic Garden that gives educational opportunities to these students, and oftentimes free. This way, New York City can remain a premier city that can compete globally. So I ask that you decline this application for the 960 Franklin Avenue construction project. Thank you.
Okay, our next slate of speakers in the courtroom: Art Chang, Christina Boyle, Barbara Adamson, Sinov Trier, and Myra Hobbin.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. Okay, is this better? Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Art Chang. I've been a resident of Brooklyn for 36 years. I've lived on Sterling Place for the past 21 years. I've been a longtime supporter of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. But I'm addressing my comments actually to the Borough President, with whom I spent countless hours on the campaign trail as one of his opponents in the mayoral campaign. And I have four things. We sat through countless Zooms with community groups and residents, and 4 lessons really came out where the Borough President can say no, and this would be a win for the Borough President and for the Borough of Brooklyn. Number 1, what makes New York City unique? Is it anonymous skyscrapers with CVS's and Starbucks in the base? Or is it actually a garden that's been here for centuries, for nearly a century, that actually is a work of art that enshrines people's memories in that place? Second is culturally responsive education, and culturally responsive everything. If anybody who's spent time in Brooklyn in the Botanic Garden knows, this is a garden that is meant not only for wealthy white people, poor black people, wealthy black people. It's meant for Asians. The Japanese garden is a place where Asians come, the cherry blossoms. It's a place for Russians. Flowers are what unifies all the different communities in New York City, in Brooklyn itself, the immigrant communities. This is why over almost 1 million people flock to the Botanic Garden every year. Number 3, it's an opportunity to reassert public responsibility over private development run amok. Number 4, and probably the most important one, is actually mental health. That gardens are a place where people seek solace. And after a year like the one we've had, this is a super important thing that we need to do. And I'll conclude with just one memory of my own, is that after 9/11, when my 15-month-old son was in daycare at the World Trade Center, the Botanic Garden opened up the Botanic Garden for free for months afterwards, for people who have been through this tragedy to be able to think and actually regain their sense of well-being and happiness. And I want to just leave all those thoughts with you, and if you could pass them along to the Borough President. I had a great time getting to know him. Thank you.
Much has been said about the I'm having a brain blank. Much has been said about the undue consumption of public resources, the minimal effort that's been made to. Oh, sorry, Christina Boyle, and I'm a resident of Prospect Lefferts Gardens. Again, sorry. Much has been said about how overconsumptive this real estate project is. The architect talked about, in order to make the math work, you need to make the buildings very tall. It's completely out of scale of the neighborhood. It does not support the community's need. What I wanted to reinforce was enlightened societies find ways to invest in public goods to support their communities because it's the most effective tool to combat income disparity and provide a place for people to mix and reinforce community and understand each other. Here we have a 100-year-old resource in the BBG that's a world-class resource, both a destination for education and treasured green space that supports mental and physical health. In a city filled with cars and nothing but gray, it's an actual oasis of looking at green nonlinear shapes. Why would we destroy this 100-year-old resource that's anchoring community for countless of families, tourism, the environment, for a one-shot gain for a real estate developer with inappropriate consumption? So I just offer, I invested my life savings and became a first-time homeowner because of in Prospect Lefferts Gardens because of the BBG. And mostly what was attractive to me wasn't necessarily the garden directly, it was the indirect effect of its support of community. It reinforces the environment, it's the community that surrounds is multiracial, multi-generational, and diverse socioeconomically, and I just feel like we really do need to support something that's supporting us. So the last thing is, by destroying the garden, you're destroying community, and I hope you really think about that. I vote no.
My name is, excuse me, my name is Barbara Adamson, and I'm a health food education with Isabella Ladies of Elegance. We have 5 gardens. If you want proof of what this building will do, go to 93 New Lots Avenue, corner of Sackman. They have put up a 13-story apartment building right across from our garden. We used to get sunlight from sun up in the morning until 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, because of this 13-story building, we get sunlight at noontime until 5. Our 8-inch cucumbers look like gherkins, little short cucumbers. It's not enough sun. We feed 50 people a week every season, the senior citizens. We don't even have enough so that we can feed through the garden. And if they take away BBG, we're sunk. BBG actually donates our seedlings so that we can feed the community. Brownsville and East New York has the highest diabetes and obesity. We need, and if we take away BBG, we're sunk. So go to 93 New Lots Avenue at the corner of Sackman and see for yourself what losing sunlight will do. Please, Mr. Adamson, say no.
My name is Synnøve Trier. I'm just going to make a short statement because all of you have been very eloquent, and I want to just add my voice to all of you, being very opposed to the rezoning. For 2 reasons. I've lived in the area within walking distance of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden for over 40 years, and I've gone to that garden for all of these years with my children, with friends, with visitors. It would be devastating for me if this great public resource would be permanently diminished. Second reason that I'm opposed to the rezoning is local residents will not be able to afford even the low-income units, has been stated before. Meanwhile, the project will promote further gentrification and further displacement of the people living in Crown Heights now. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Myra Halbin. Oh, sorry. My name is Myra Halbin, and I wanted to speak from the heart, and I wrote it down, and then I didn't bring my reading glasses, and I can't, and I'm really nervous, so I'm just going to take my glasses off, stick the paper in my face. I've been teaching at CUNY since I was 24 years old and came out of graduate school and immediately started teaching in CUNY. And I've lived for the past 42 years in walking distance of the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens. It's been a place of magic and peace and learning about people and plants from around the world. I've regularly walked and sat in all the different sections of the gardens and noticed the children, the community gardens, the families, the people of all ages, races, religions, and people clearly visiting from many countries. I've sat quietly grading endless streams of papers that those of us who teach face daily. This is a world-class garden that draws local community members and visitors to it regularly and really reflects to me the best of New York City, where it's all there happening. Using the need for more affordable housing while destroying the gardens should not be allowed to happen. I was at the Community Board 9 Zoom meeting about this issue on June 21st. 500 people registered to speak their 2 minutes, and except for the developer and one person who he promised housing to, everyone spoke in opposition with their personal stories of their love and use of the gardens by their families, and we've heard much of that tonight. The BBG director brought one of the 3 binders that he mentioned earlier tonight with 55,000 testimonials from members opposing this rezoning. I'm begging that there be no upzoning for building these 39-story twin towers, which will block the sunlight over the gardens and destroy the community. The developer's comment, use artificial light during those times of shading, speaks huge volumes. Please oppose this. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any more WebEx speakers at this time? We do not. Okay. Our next 5 speakers are Nancy Faith Anello, Joshua Broom, Martin Beasy, Sherwin Yap, and Crystal Hudson.
Hello. Thank you. My name is Nancy Anello, and I'm a lifelong New Yorker who was born in Brooklyn. My husband and I are members of the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, and we live on the same block as this proposed development. We also live around the corner from the Jackie Robinson Playground, which will also be destroyed by this development, in addition to the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. Anthropologist Margaret Mead once said, what did she say? She said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." And I would like to take a minute to thank the countless people who have been fighting this fight for going on years now, since 2014. My husband and I joined in 2017, and we felt like we came in halfway through the play started. There isn't much more that can be said that hasn't already been said today about this disgraceful development. Brooklyn Botanical Gardens belongs to the people of New York, to the city of New York. And just to put things in perspective, in fiscal year ending 2019, the Brooklyn Botanical Garden generated $23 million for the city. And last year, Brooks Eischinger, the developer of this proposed development, sold just 1 unit for $45 million. So when we ask affordable for who, we expect an answer. The answer, of course, is the unmitigated and unfettered greed that has continued to destroy this city. Blah, 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 blah. My husband and I are proud members of Local 1212, the Electrical Union, and we're offended that fellow union members would disparage a union such as the Brooklyn Botanical Garden union members. Are they the only union members who matter? This needs to be voted down once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Josh Broom, and I live on Washington Ave next to the garden, and I speak in opposition. I love the garden. It's such an amazing place that I see tourists from all around the world there all the time. Affordable housing is very important, but we don't need to sacrifice the garden in order to attain it. And that's what this rezoning would be. Sacrifice the garden for affordable housing. Don't believe the developers' shady shadow studies. It would be sacrificed. There will be lots of opportunities to create affordable housing, but if we lose the garden, we won't get it back. So let's talk about affordable housing. Even the affordable units are above the current neighborhood income rates. And if you flood the market with 2 39-story towers full of above-market units, you will effectively raise the market rate for everybody. We discussed this in depth at our CB9 community board meetings. All the units in the building are above the neighborhood market rate. More developers will push to build in a similar fashion, and all the rent will become less affordable. So please vote a straight no to clamp down on gentrification, to protect our beloved Botanic Garden, and let them build under the current zoning. And thank you to all my neighbors for voicing your opposition.
Hi, my name is Martin Bisi. I'm a struggling musician and recording engineer from that little overlooked area where Park Slope meets Gowanus. And I raised a child there, and we would make the 30-minute walk from our place to the garden. And I want to underline that really it is a gem, and it is unique even aside from Prospect Park. I mean, it was always like a Father's Day with the child, and it was special, healthy for a young mind, and good for a family and family dynamics. Thinking of mental health, I feel like channeling Olmsted and Vaux. What would Olmsted and Vaux say to this? That was a time, I guess, in the Victorian era where really there was a thinking that human beings that were worried about, extreme urbanization and actually, I guess, mental health. What was the nature of humanity? Where would it be without this connection to nature? Well, Prospect Park is what it is. The Botanical Garden is even more special. And I think actually right now we have an opportunity to reaffirm its specialness. So this is almost an opportunity in considering what's happening. Also, really quickly, the thing that struck me listening to other testimony is I wasn't going to mention gentrification, but I'm in Gowanus, and we're going to have, 5,000 luxury units, and even a lot of the below market rate are still going to be, very well-off people. And this is a population that homogenizes, and the diversity is basically not, it's way below market rate renters, and that is threatened. And there's so much luxury development coming to Brooklyn, particularly if the Gowanus rezoning passes. Thanks a lot.
Hello, how you doing? My name is Sherwin Yap, and I'm a past graduate of the BUG program. I'm basically in opposition of the proposed 960 Franklin Avenue project, but I'd just like to start by saying that I think what we're talking about today basically is how do you move society forward. The human orientation is forward. We get up in the morning, we take a train, we take a plane, we're all trying to move forward. So how do you move society forward? So I think this is basically what I'm gonna discuss today. I'd just like to speak directly to Eric Adams and just remind him that he's not just a father, ex-police captain, a senator, an author, but he's possibly stepping into the rare title of planetary leader. The things you do here to push society forward will be heard around the world. This development doesn't push society forward. And not every project has to push society forward. But when you are comparing it to an institution that is pushing society forward, then it becomes extremely relevant in this case. This is the old playbook of offering low-income housing in order to get a foothold into a neighborhood. which no longer works for a progressive society. And let's be clear, this isn't merely about plants. Brooklyn Botanical Garden is an institutional beacon and one of the great wonders of Brooklyn. Each borough has these types of institutions, and you must protect ours at all costs. Developers wouldn't be able to create a project in Manhattan near the Met Museum that is slated to damage its antiquities. The 23 conservatories, greenhouses, and nurseries are the lifeblood of this institution and essentially its antiquities. And lastly, the planned project has a key flaw in its environmental assessment, in that there's no study that has been done on how to protect the Atlantic Flyway, which is part of Brooklyn Botanical Garden and Prospect Park. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Bear with me while I read a truncated version of my longer testimony to fit within the time frame here. But my name is Crystal Hudson. I'm a third-generation Brooklynite. I'm the founder of Greater Prospect Heights Mutual Aid, and I'm a candidate for New York City Council in Brooklyn's 35th District, which is where the 960 Franklin Avenue redevelopment project is located. Thank you to the Borough Presidents team for giving me the opportunity to speak today. While we regroup and work toward recovery, developers and other real estate interests continue to operate behind the scenes to force through new developments that are not in the best interests of local communities. The latest example being the proposed redevelopment and rezoning at 960 Franklin Avenue. These developers focus their efforts not on what a community needs, like a new facility for after-school programs or truly affordable housing units for residents in an area where the median household income is $50,765, where more than 9,000 residents have received food stamp benefits in the past year, and where more than 2,200 receive cash public assistance, but instead on what will make them the most money. In a time of unending unpredictability, one thing is certain: our community does not need or want this development, and that is why I strongly and unequivocally oppose the 960 Franklin project. Foremost, this project fails the most basic requirement for an affordable housing project, which is affordability. The developers note that half of the units would be set aside as affordable, but as many have already noted, this does not mean that the units would be affordable for residents of the development's surrounding community. The request to lift the height restrictions for this project threatens to fundamentally change the character of the neighborhood. The proposed towers also pose a threat to one of our borough's biggest cultural institutions, the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. The shadows cast by the new development will hamstring the garden's ability to breed new plants and could result in the elimination of half of its collection within a decade. In turn, this could result in the loss of millions of dollars in economic activity a year, much of which supports the small businesses around the garden like restaurants and retail stores. Above all, this project has been forced through for approval with absolutely no substantial community input. And I know we have a housing and jobs crisis on our hands, but we need to build responsibly and use a community-first approach to development, and I urge Borough President Adams to disapprove of this proposed development. Thank you.
Okay, we have another speaker via WebEx, Sarah Fisher.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, excellent. I'm probably repeating a lot of what everyone else said, but I'm going to read what I wrote. I'm in opposition to the request for zoning variance. Two towers would dramatically alter the quality of life, both for community members, which also includes the garden and the neighboring parks and schools. Zoning, which was put in place in 1991, was especially put in place to prevent buildings such as 960, which was proposed, from being built, to protect a national treasure and educational resource, and that should be the top priority. I grew up in Queens. I don't live in the city right now, but I grew up in Queens, and we used to take the train to go to the Brooklyn Museum. When I was lucky, my mom would take me through the back door into the garden. Dad used to take us during the magnolia bloom and the cherry blossom bloom. Great memories going there. I've spent my time as a gardener, I'm a painter, I believe that all the time that I spent in the gardens led me to the path that I've taken in my life. The meeting for the Community Board 9 last week, it was also brought up, as other people so eloquently said, that there would be increased garbage and traffic, which is detrimental to the area. I think you have to take everything into account to consider that these two obtrusive buildings do not have a place in this location. Thank you.
Do we have any other speakers via WebEx or by phone at this time? None. Okay. Our next 5 speakers are Garland Roberts, Fred Baptiste, whom we acknowledge the chair of Community Board 9, Liberty Gutiens, Nancy Hotch, and Teresa Westerdahl.
I'm mad as Hades. My name is Garland Roberts. I'm a veteran. I'm head of the Black Alumni Association, Brooklyn Technical High School. I'm also with Veterans Saving American World and Veteran Garden Initiative. Originally, I had the pleasure of having a godmother of White Anna Marie Blinn, who took me to the garden and actually trained me with a West Indian man that most people don't know, that they took the thing away from him of all the things he did for the point of not orchids and that whole thing that the world has mainly dealt with. But the training I had was part of the situation, but I am the original person that came up with the 7-story height restrictions in the LBJ Model Cities time. And it's very, very important. They cannot go over 4 stories. First of all, there are restrictors in the roofs that take the water slower down. But if you take any walk when it rains, the water comes gushing out. The fire hydrants and the system for the fire department is defective, and they kept it from the people. The other point is that this situation is more than a situation that's regular. I won in 1978 from the Crockett's Victory Garden, if you Google, and then at Penn State, when I was at HRB Singer, the professors used my gardens, a person trained at Brooklyn without the college training, to train their advanced students. The main thing also that people have not brought out in this particular hearing, and this is important, there has to be legislation. This developer is a criminal. You can't let people that commit felonies. He arrested somebody trying to deal with a court order. The actual judge had to come down to the facility from the courtroom to stop him. In every situation I've dealt with as a contractor and an engineer, anybody that has a felony is not allowed to submit anything in the future. This person should not be able to go forward. There should be legislation enacted, and in respect for Anna Marie Blinn, because I was executive for a will, she was worth millions of dollars, but somebody stole the will. Part of her monies were going to Brooklyn Botanical Gardens. I also was involved with Clarence Thomas, and you know what he went through, and he has made a change. It's up to Eric Adams to match Clarence Thomas. If Clarence Thomas can turn around and change, he has to do what has to be done, and we have to present legislation to the city council to block these people that have this felony. It's a felony. How can you put in something after that?
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you.
I think I'm gonna need a big clock. Can you hear me? I want to thank everyone this evening. I want to thank the Borough President's Office for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Fred Baptiste, and it is my privilege to serve as the chair of Community Board 9. Community Board 9 passed a resolution on June 23rd with the following recommendations. To disapprove the application for 960 Franklin Avenue without modifications and conditions, that the 1991 zoning of the district should be sustained as it previously contemplated the issue of height restrictions for the protection of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden and the surrounding community, that any proposed modifications to the application after certification should not be considered as part of this ULURP review, as the board has not been provided sufficient documentation to substantiate or refute any claims made in any revised presentations, that the Brooklyn Borough President, the Borough Board, the City Planning Commission, the City Council, and the Mayor should disapprove the application without modifications or conditions. The resolution was a result of months of conversations, documented requests, reviews, and testimony from the community. Much of the testimony provided by the speakers reflect much of what was captured in the board's recommendation. But for this evening, we would like to reiterate that the zoning question has been decided. The 1991 zoning, which sets current limits to ensure that the impacts of the district will be reasonable and in line with the character of the neighborhood. The land use review process allows for the consideration of variances, but our position, simply put, is that the benefits for the community as proposed in this application are insufficient, and the potential for harm to the BBG, to Medgar Evers College, to the Jackie Robinson Playground, to the neighbors in the district who are already just hanging on, dealing with already strained infrastructure and resources. This is just too great for this project to proceed. Though this project was filed in April 2020 and approved in 2021, the conversation regarding this project goes back to 2019. Concerns raised now were present and stated then, and yet the application was refiled and substantially unchanged. In conclusion, the people have spoken loud and clear, both at Community Board 9 and here this evening. And Community Board 9 calls on the Borough President, the City Planning Commission, the City Council, and the Mayor to disapprove the application without modifications and conditions. The costs simply outweigh any proposed benefits, and we simply can't afford it. Thank you.
Liberty Gutens, followed by Nancy Hodge, and Teresa Westerdahl.
My name is Liberty Geichens. I'm 16, and I grew up in Crown Heights. Grew up close to the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens. The BBG has been a haven for the entirety of my youth, experiencing nature, rolling in the grass and smelling the flowers. For 9 years, I was in the children's gardening program where I learned about growing plants and gardening and harvesting food. The BBG is one of the very few places where unique plants are preserved, and it allows for people to relax in the brutal summers. Children learn about plant life that many city kids don't experience without the BBG. I'm determined to stop this miserable monster development and to keep and preserve the abundance of plant life and habitats. I ride the train over the Manhattan Bridge every day on my way to school, and this new tower is made from reflective glass, which causes a glare that burns my eyes, and the train becomes instantly hotter. If these buildings are built in my neighborhood and the Botanic Gardens, the microclimate in its environment will become hot and miserable. This will affect the garden, the Jackie Robinson Playground, and the students at McGrath and Jackie Robinson School. The development will destroy the plants and nature of the BBG of enjoyment, food, and a place where future generations can spend their time and learn about the earth. Climate change and global warming is happening and will continue to happen. The Botanic Garden is an oasis that will be damaged and destroyed by this eventually, but the building's glare and overcast shadows in the environment of the garden will be destroyed, and by the lack of natural sunlight and the amount of glare and heat that will be emitted from the building, it will happen even faster. This is my future and the next generation's futures. And so by rezoning, you're destroying the future of New York City youth. Vote no to rezoning. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nancy Hoke, and I am a member of the Maple Street Community Garden, which has over 600 members and supporters, and we have taken a position in support of the BBG's fight for sunlight. The BBG has helped us in innumerable ways, giving us advice and support, including the seedlings that grow in their nursery every year. But because you have heard so much about the ill effects of this project on the BBG, I want to use my time to speak as a 34-year resident of Community District 9 about the effect this project will have on our neighborhood. I think this project is rooted in race and class inequalities, and the effect of this development, if it were to be built, would have a drastic effect on the affordability of our neighborhood. Some context. CD9 borders not only the BBG, but also a long stretch of Prospect Park. We are one of the most densely populated areas in Brooklyn, and we have a very, very large stock of rent-stabilized apartments. While gentrification over the past few years has changed our complexion, we are still a majority African American and African Caribbean neighborhood. In addition to having more people of color than the other neighborhoods around Prospect Park, we also have the lowest income level of any neighborhood that borders the park. Another distinction we have is that we are the only community district around Prospect Park that has not been allowed to place height limits on the buildings bordering Prospect Park. Every other neighborhood that borders the park has been allowed to cap the buildings near the park at about 7 stories. We've been asking the City Planning Commission since at least 2008 to put such height limits on the buildings in our neighborhood, on the buildings that are near the park, and we've been brushed off every time. Clearly, our neighborhood didn't have the political clout that the wealthier, whiter neighborhoods around the park have. It sometimes feels like our neighborhood has a target on its back. Developers can come here and make money in a way they couldn't elsewhere. For example, because we don't have height limits on the park, we now have the tallest building on Prospect Park, 23 stories, at 626 Flatbush, built just a few years ago. If 960 Franklin goes ahead, it will not only break the only place in our neighborhood bordering a green space that has height limitations, but it will hurt our neighborhood's affordability going forward. The point has been made here by others that the vast majority of the 1,500 apartments will be market rate, which of course means most of the apartments will be unaffordable to the residents who now live in our community.
Sorry, please wrap up your comments.
Yes, I will. The units are going to be very expensive also because they border a green area and people pay, that's why they build high next to green areas, because they can build, they can charge very luxurious prices. So that fact will have an upward pressure not only on all the buildings around those apartments. So that's why this is an affordability issue for the rest of our community. So I urge you to vote no on this development because it will fuel gentrification, which is already pushing long-term and low-income residents out of our neighborhood.
Hi, I'm Teresa Westerdahl. I live on Sullivan Place. I'm part of the Sullivan Ludlam Stoddard Block Neighborhood Association. I'm the person who plans the block party in our neighborhood. I moved to Crown Heights in 2005. I was pregnant with this child behind me. And when I moved there, we were the only white family in my neighborhood. And we joined the BBG right away and spent most of her youth there. And since I have lived there, I noticed something. I noticed that the BBG was getting rid of their science center. I thought, oh, that's not a good sign, and I opposed that. And then I saw the neighborhood slowly changing. It was like there was a plan, like a plot maybe, against my neighborhood. I've seen a lot of my neighbors lose their homes. I see a dumpster come outside of an apartment building. I know a neighbor is losing their home. I've seen an older black man that lived on my block. I saw them try to change the locks and drag him out of his apartment. NYPD actually came and allowed him to stay, but he's gone now. And slowly I see my neighbors having to leave, and they're replaced by people like me, white people, almost 90% of the time. You know, those big buildings, the rents are raising. I own a home. I have a rental. I know my rent that I could charge for the two-family I live in is double. You know, does that seem okay? It doesn't seem okay to me, but, you know, people will take advantage of that. I'm not the most eloquent speaker, I'm sorry, but I'm here to just say that this is more than just the BBG. That what's going to happen to the BBG is horrible if that development goes up, but what's happening to my community is very bad. You know, well, that's my time has ended. So please oppose this development. And I wonder where Eric Adams is. Isn't he supposed to be here? I came here with the idea that I was going to speak to the borough president and he'd be here listening to us. But he's not even here. Where is he? Nobody knows? Do you guys know?
We're here representing the office. He has a very busy schedule this evening, so we're here representing
It seems like pretty important. I would expect he'd be here. Maybe he doesn't care. All right.
I can assure you that there are 4 staff members here. He certainly cares. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other speakers via WebEx or phone? We do not. So we have 2 remaining speakers who signed up, Catherine Ann French and Zenobia McNally.
And if there's anybody that hasn't spoken that would like to sign up, you can still sign up before we conclude with our speakers.
Okay, I'll call you.
Can I take my mask off?
No, you have with mask. Thank you.
My name is Catherine Ann French. I've been a resident of Brooklyn for over 50 years. I went to Pratt Institute, and that's when I first discovered the Botanical Garden. I had a drawing class that sent us out to the gardens to do drawings. It's been a lifelong friend. It probably reintroduced me to things that had been part of my childhood and that I'd just sort of forgotten. I have been a gardener in Connecticut for the past 30 years. I came back to Brooklyn after my husband died and returned to the house I have here. I was a founding member of Underwood Park's garden, and it is being destroyed by the fact that kids don't know about gardens and plants. And the fact that they've taken down the signs that say no dogs. You can't trample things that are in nature. They don't bounce back. They're not meant to be city thoroughfares. And they need light and care and water to survive. If you build something that is going to block out one of those major components, you will have an unmitigated effect on the garden that cannot be changed. If you build taller buildings, you destroy the community. There was a study done in the 1970s that they published in the New York Times about the fact that a woman who cannot see her children's faces when they live in a building that is over 6 stories tall can't correct her child. We have kids who don't understand. You cannot run over things that are planted in the garden. It's the kind of thing that you're doing with this zoning. You're running over the garden. Don't allow this to happen. Make the zoning heights permanent, irrevocable. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Zenobia McNally, and I'm a longtime resident of Flatbush. I'm a community activist, I'm a gardener and farmer, and I'm an earth keeper. And I'm here today to talk not so much about, because the time has been well spent extolling the virtues of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden and the wonderful people who work there, okay? And they deserve all of our applause and our welcome. But I'm violently opposed to the building that will defect, that will cast take the sunlight out of the Botanical Garden. For how many hours? And it also is not something for our community, as so many people rightly spoke about. I'd like to take the time, though, because I want to talk about the fact that the mayor and the city planning and city council finally came around to realizing this was supposed to be opposed. It took them a long time, but they got there. But I want to take my time talking about all of the people who support the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. And as many people as spoke here today, and as many people as they represent, it's really beyond that. The scope, and let the numbers do the talking. Annual visitors to the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, 800,000. Annual visitors to their website, 1.8 million. BBG members, 20,000. BBG community program participants, 50,000. Children in the program, 250,000. Fight for Sunlight community petitioners, 56,000. The FLAC supporters and their petitions, 15,000. MTOP community protectors, led by Alicia Boyle and her team, 12 people. The CB9 community supporters, 500 plus people. My question to a total of 2,991,512 people supporting the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. More than we could ever expect here. Why? Because it's deserving. And my last thing I have to say is that thank goodness the Parks Department, and of course they would know, that the sunlight badly and would affect the garden. And they're the ones that we should be glad for, that it was led by a commission who understands the importance of green space. And I think all of you today could testify, thank God we had green space during this unknown pandemic. Thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Okay, we have one more speaker, Virginia Levy.
Hi, that's a very hard act to follow, but I'm the most paranoid COVID person in the world, so the fact that I sat in here for a couple of hours and listened to this testimony is just a measure of how strongly I and my organization, which is the South Midwood Pollinators, feel about this issue. We are a group of urban gardeners that is trying to create a pollinator corridor in Flatbush, Brooklyn. And we're a scrappy bunch, you know, we're urban gardeners. And as urban gardeners, we can fix almost anything. We can fix the soil, we can add water, we can fix drainage. But sunlight is our most precious commodity. We can't do anything about sunlight. We count our blessings when we get 6 hours of sun a day on a hill strip or in a backyard. So the idea that the zoning would ever even be contemplated to be changed for the Brooklyn Botanic Garden it's just mind-boggling, right? It not only should not be granted for this ridiculous building that has all these other bad consequences for the community, but it should never be changed. There is no way you can garden without sun. That is just it. Sun is our God-given right as human beings, and we have to protect it, particularly in the city. So anyway, that's just what I wanted to say on behalf of all of us that love the garden, use the garden, and cherish Brooklyn. So thank you.
I'd like to make one last call for Susan Metz. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this application who has not signed up to do so?
If after you speak, you could fill out a speaker slip for us, thank you.
I wasn't going to speak because you spoke so eloquently. You touched on all of the issues. But I've been in this community for 44 years.
A little closer to the mic.
For 44 years, though I tell everybody I'm 38, and I have 31-year-old grandchildren. But this is where I took my children when I first got in the neighborhood, and I didn't, after rent is paid and Even with child support and everything, when everything was paid and I had no money, I could take them to the garden. That's when it was free, we just walked in. Or if we was going to Eastern Parkway, we walked through the garden to Eastern Parkway. It was everything to me. It was everything to my children. I didn't raise my voice when we were in the garden. They could run around. You know, dogs weren't allowed, so they could actually roll in the grass. Prospect Park and Central Park, you can't let your kids roll in that grass. They're dog parks. And they could roll in the grass, and Mommy didn't say nothing, and she wasn't complaining. She didn't say what Daddy said. It was like an oasis for my little kids. You know, I worked 9 to 5. I went to school, Hunter College. I just did everything. But when I went in the garden with my children, they knew they wouldn't have to hear my mouth or worry about, we got to hurry up and get out of here to go to the grocery store, the cleaners. That was like their haven. That was their part of New York. Not only that, when I was ill a few years ago, I'm funny about sitting on the grass. I sit on the benches or walk around for all the tours. But I was so sick, all I could do was lay in the bed, because I ended up having a couple operations on my colon. Watch what you eat. And they say, Joanne, if you if you lay in the bed, it saps your energy. That's why you're so sick. So I would go for a year and a half, going back and forth to the gastrologist and stuff. I would go lay in the grass in the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, and I would feel like I would sleep there. I wouldn't worry about the bug or ants going to get on me. And it was rejuvenating for me, and it saved my life. And I didn't have to lay in the bed all day, even though I was in a lot of pain. So it's a lifesaver in a lot of ways, mentally, emotionally, and physically. Thank you for this time and effort.
Okay, at this time, I think we have gone through all of the speakers who signed up. And so, Richard, if you can do the honors and close the hearing.
Okay, calendar item number 1 is closed.
This hearing on this application is now closed. Thank you for participating in this public hearing. Brooklyn Borough President Adams will review the application heard today and submit his recommendations to the City Planning Commission for further consideration. Borough President Adams would also like to take this opportunity to remind you that the City Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on this item, which will be announced at a later date. Borough President Adams would also like to remind viewers that comments can be submitted by email to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov. This hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.
It was, we had like a 2-day notice.